TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Welcome to another edition of the RF Video Shoot Interview Series, where it is more than a pleasure to have for the first time a former World Wrestling Federation heavyweight champion 2 times, Sycho Sid Eudy, Vicious.
Sid Eudy. That's close enough.
Okay, cool. Let's get
going.
Yeah, all right. Let's get right into it. How'd you get started in the wrestling business?
All right. Well, I'll answer it, but I've probably answered this 1,000 times. What it was is I live in Marion, Arkansas, which is about a 15-minute drive from Memphis, and so I was working out at this club, this little gym called French Riviera, and Randy Savage and his brother Lanny was in there. This is when they were working the Memphis Territory. I had just gotten received a walk-on scholarship with Arkansas State, and I was getting ready for spring camp. The weird thing about it is also I was married, had just gotten married pretty young, and had a baby on the way.
Oh, wow.
So what my idea was to go to college maybe 2 years and maybe try to bust into the NFL as an offensive lineman. I had a good chance of that because I had great speed. I just needed, keep the weight up. So I was telling Randy Savage about that. He said, man, you got to forget about this. I said, man, you got to get into wrestling. I thought, well, I had just been talking to some guys that were playing with that Memphis Showboat to that. I'd get an idea the average offensive lineman was making anywhere from about $35,000 to $100,000 a year. They were making a lot of money. So I said, what kind of money is in it? He goes, a guy like you probably make $50,000, $60,000 a year. I said, really? And I said, I could do this soon. He said, yeah. So I think, no, I have responsibilities of a family coming. And so I said, well, he hooked me up with Tojo Yamamoto. At the same time, also Hillbilly Jim was in the territory, which was, I think, Harley Davidson at the time. Okay. He was there. We all would run across each other about the same time at the gym. He's telling me how to do the same thing. So they introduced me to Tojo Yamamoto, who went to that's the wrestling school I went to. And that's how I started. Well, that's how I was introduced. It was actually like that.
Okay. When you first broke in the Memphis area, were the veterans helpful to you, or?
Yeah, they were, because the thing too was, in a great way, in sort of a sad way, Memphis Territory is really strong on protecting business, and I believe that too. But we've taken, where I've been in the business, it's almost too hard to say, well, I wrestle this guy or whatever. When you're in WWF, that makes you lax. It's like, no, it's entertainment now, Sid. That's why you can be slapped around by a girl, because it's not real.
Right.
That's what they tell you. So after you're young and you go to a WWF real young, then it's entertainment. Then you sort of lose a little bit of the touches of your old school stuff. But being in Memphis, they were pretty good. Matter of fact, the guy was here tonight, Nick Bockwinkel, was with my very first match.
Wow.
I was Austin Idol's partner against Lawler and Bockwinkel. And what happened I was still in school at Tojo, but the mystery partner, who I think was supposed to have been Terry Funk, didn't show up. So they called me. I was at home eating. They called me at the last minute and said, get up here, you're going to wrestle tonight. There's Lord Humongous. And so I said, really? And they said, yeah. So I didn't have any wrestling gear other than what they loaned. I had my wrestling boots, but they loaned me the gimmick. And so I went out as, Austin Idol's partner. And I remembered, especially someone who thinks they've got a little bit of muscle, Right. But I remember that night, man, we just walked to the ring. Austin Idol was saying, come on, man, look big. I couldn't get my muscles to flex. I couldn't. I don't know how I really looked, but I felt like I looked real weird. I want to say, I can't remember who came to my first match, but I remember them saying, man, you really look awkward standing there. So I guess that's what it was, but that was my first match. And they were helpful. Nick Bockwinkel was a nice guy, a gentleman to me my very first time in. So I worked that territory for a little bit, then I went over to Continental.
Right. That was my next question. You went over there, you were Lord Humongous again, and I think you were with Shane Douglas at the time?
No, actually, when I first went in there, me and Harvey Whippleman, who was downtown Bruno, went in as my manager. We worked there at the territory for about 8 months, and then Eddie came in.
Oh, okay.
All right. Eddie was a great guy, but he brought in Paul Lee. Bruno was real nervous about his position in the business, especially back then as a manager. And also, he really liked Memphis, his home, even though it was my fondest memories of the business when I was in Continental. And I don't know if it was because what it was, but it was all the guys were great. The territory was great. The drives were great. You know, I was in Panama City once a month, and I mean, I've never been to Florida. I'm from Arkansas, right?
Yeah.
I'm just a dumb hillbilly. You know, really, I mean, I remember me and Bruno driving all the way to Panama City one night after the matches because we were going to be there the next day. We drove and walked out on the beach at night. You know, we were just like, man, you believe we're at the ocean. You know? But so I started with Bruno. Eddie came in, brought Paulie in. Bruno got nervous and asked to gave his notice and got a spot back in Memphis. And then that's when they started to do the deal with Shane Douglas and myself, who I was supposed to be his long lost cousin.
Right.
I don't know if that point ever got across, but that was the point.
Right. How was Eddie Gilbert as a booker back then? Those were his early days.
Eddie Gilbert, you know, the thing was that Eddie Eddie gave me a lot of knowledge for the business too. He's one of the people I was talking to that guy, Mike, for a second. And the thing about me, I've been real lucky in the business since I've been in business day one. I've been around somebody who either owned a territory or was a booker of a territory for years.
Right.
I could go all night long with the guys I've hung around. I consider really great people like Arn Anderson, Bill Watts, great minds like that.
Right.
Pat Patterson, you know, a great mind, really educated me a whole lot. So when you think of that, what was the question again?
Basically, Eddie Gilbert as a booker.
Right. So we've been around people like that. You really appreciate it. But Eddie was real quiet back then. And I don't know if he was, he's always been sort of like that laid back. But we did have a couple times where we got to sit around and talk with each other personally, one-on-one. It was pretty good conversation. But as a booker, I thought he was real good. And I think what happens is, you know, in those territories small like that, you know, you do really great during the summer, and then you have your little fall down seat falls off right at school.
Right.
Well, the guy that owned the territory was a TV guy. His dad's Charles Woods, you know, was a multi-entrepreneur, millionaire who's 99% burnt. I don't know if you heard the story.
Somewhat.
But he's one of the richest men in the country. And this kid was spoiled all his life, owns a couple TV stations. He didn't know anything about it. So what it was, they had a guy named Jack Curtis.
Okay.
And somebody else, I think they were trying to screw Eddie around, make him lose his job, which they did. And then he left. And then when Bob Armstrong took over, I left and went back to Memphis.
Right. Were you happy as far as the Lord Humongous gimmick, or did you want?
Yeah, I did. You know, I thought it was fun. The thing was, when I first, before I got in the business, Hillbilly Jim, he gave me some, he said, man, let me give you a little bit of advice about the business, okay? He says, you can make a lot of money. He says, you can have a lot of fun, do a lot of things, go to a lot of places. He said, but man, don't get caught up in winning and losing because it is fake. And that, you know, if somebody asks, he said, this question, I remember just like it was just, he goes, and they said, Jim, we want you to lose tonight. He goes, how do we do it? You can trip as a fall in the ring. I mean, those are, you know, I wish I had that kind of temperament, but I don't. I don't argue about winning or losing, but I will tell you if I think it sucks or not. You know, I'll do it. You know? Yeah. But what was it?
Just about being happy as the Lord Humongous.
Lord Humongous, see, that was fun for me. I was telling some guys about it the other night. I went for 6 months, and this was my match almost every night for 6 months. Me and Harvey would go into the ring. And poor old Danny Davis, Nightmare Danny Davis, somehow he got booked with me every night. And when I would even be booked with someone else, something happened to that guy, and Danny would have to take his place anyway. For like the first 6 months, this was my match. We'd go to the ring. Bruno would get on the mic, and he'd go, okay, tonight, Sid, or not Sid, he said, Lord Humongous, tonight I'm going to give you a night off. I'm going to fight Danny Davis myself. He said, you just come over here and sit down. He takes his shirt off. He jumps down, does the push-ups, his jumping jacks. He starts, and then Danny starts chasing him. As they chase outside the ring, I enter the ring. They run a couple times around. Bruno slides through. Danny slides in. Boom, headbutt. I cover him. 1, 2, 3. I said, man, this is great. You know? So as Lord Humongous, it was fun. It was funny though. You remember the first time my wife and my son came down to Continental to watch me wrestle for the first time because I lived there by myself and they lived in Marion because that's where she worked. We pulled into Dothan, Alabama, and Bruno and the kid was in the back, and my kid goes, "Aha! See, my dad's got a hood and you don't." And I wore a little black hood to get into the building, so he thought it was special.
Yeah,
actually, it's degrading. I thought, but it was fun. It was fun. Actually, one day I'd like to not do the gimmick myself. I'd like to get someone else to do it, and I'd like to be the guy behind him.
All right.
Because I think I really got an idea for something like that now, because I did do it, and then I do believe I'm really one of the smarter people for the business. And I can say, it sounds like bragging, but almost everything I've ever done has been pretty successful.
All right.
Even in the lower ranks of Memphis, even that one year I stayed there before I came back to WWF, that was their best year they'd had in years.
Really?
And every angle that was shot, I pretty much called it as far as my stuff.
Right.
And that's what was drawn, not PG-13.
As far as the choke slams, when you were doing the choke slams?
Yeah. All that's all my stuff, yeah.
Yeah, wow. You worked Memphis off and on throughout your career. A lot of people don't like him. A lot of people like him. What is your opinion of Jerry Lawler?
See, the thing about it is, being Jerry Lawler, I believe, and I feel this, and I think he feels the same, is we have in a way, great respect for each other. See, as a promoter, I can see what he has to go through, because I'd like to be a booker one day or a runner of a territory. And I've talked to people like him and Vince and Ole, and I see their frustrations, and I understand what they have to go through. And I can see where, the thing about it is, when you're in his position, you're always going to be a hated guy. Always. Now, I don't agree with some of his things, the way he gets upset about over certain little things about, he gives a lot of guys a lot of grief about some things. I do understand why he does it. I understand why he's doing it, but I don't understand why he does it.
Right.
Like that. But he's never done me like that. If I want to go wrestle somewhere else on the same night he's running town, we never have a problem like that. And he's always been good to me. He's been the first one to bring me back and give me a payday. Yeah. My first payday back was with him. Right. It wasn't with here or anywhere else. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was. It was something common courtesy, that we sort of have with each other. I think he's a great guy. I think we all have room for improvements of things we should or should not do. I'm like him too. I'm probably never going to agree with certain things. Like I don't agree with women should be in the ring or be in wrestling.
Really?
He's sort of pretty much like that too, I believe. We still have some of those old beliefs. And I think that's where we have a little respect for each other. And that's why we have we're not best friends, but we never have arguments.
Right.
We're always pretty courteous to each other.
It's a follow-up question to that. Nothing that I had written down, just something just out of your answer. From what I'm getting, you seem more, I guess the term would be old school as far as you're thinking of the business.
No, I'm old school, and I like the old school. But the thing is about this, guys, is nothing in the world takes steps backwards. You got to go on. All right, now, for example, if we have taken the business where it is today, then we have to decide what direction to take it up to make it either more glamorous or more wrestling. One of the two. Of course, you have to have the combination of both, because both elements have already been put into the business.
All right.
So you got to either polish both elements more or find another element to take that next step. And I think maybe that's why Vince is, he's stuck in his one groove that he thinks baby faces should, always be the champions and stuff like that, where I don't believe that. That's why I'm a little bit old school. I'll give you an example real quick too. When I was working for Vince, and not this time, but the time before, they beat me every night. 30 seconds sometimes, every night. I didn't care. Because, I'm getting paid the same about 30 seconds to 30 minutes.
Right. But
this is what happens. When if you're a heel, when you come out of that dressing room, people go, you suck, man. You really suck, All right. So when I'm going to my car and I put my bag in, the guy goes, you suck, man. I go, yeah, I sure do. I put the bag in, he goes, no, not really, man. You're pretty good. See, the sympathy was on me.
Yeah.
You don't want sympathy on your heels. You want it on your baby faces. And that's where the misconception is. And I think that is why WCW is kicking his ass in ratings. Really? It's not that they produce a better show. It's just because they're doing the basics. And everything in life, basics is always what gives you a good stronghold. And it might be old school, but it's glamorous. Right. NWO, Hollywood, Right. See what I mean? But the heat's there. Look at Razor Ramon, man. He gets beat every night. Nitro. He's over as strong as anybody in the territory.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those are some old school tactics that Bill Watts taught me.
Yeah.
So go back to that.
Okay. I guess from there you went WCW. You
Yeah.
teamed with Dan Spivey at the Skyscrapers.
Right.
What are your memories of teaming with Dan Spivey at the Skyscrapers?
It was great days too. It was, I was brought in first to Sid Vicious as the singles, and I think it was just doing tryouts and TVs, and then the committee, of course, Eddie Gilbert is the one who gave me my break there. He's the one who called me and brought me in. Him and I think Bill Apter had something to do with it by sending some pictures to Mr. Barnett. Barnett and Eddie got together, and Eddie said, "Yeah, I know this guy, and I think he's the one that recommended me to come in." So I came in at first, and I think they, I was what you could say a diamond in the rough. I still needed a lot to learn, but they brought Danny in the beginning to take all the bumps and just let me come in and do all the killer stuff. Well, we found out after a while I wasn't really learning anything from that. I'm still, I'm a big guy, but think about now, look at big guys. And I think at one time, last time I worked for New York, I think I was suplexed off the top of that fucking cage for 17 days in a row by Brett. We're forced now to do more things, but maybe just one,
right.
But it was fun working with Danny. Me and Danny had a great relationship. We're great friends, traveled together, compatible, and it was a lot of fun in those days too.
Whose decision was it to break up the team?
I wasn't really, it was my accident, but I had a punctured lung.
Right.
I had a broken rib that punctured a hole in my lung and caused me to be out, I think, almost 6 or 7 months. So I only have 1.5 lungs.
Okay.
I have 1.5 lung, if that's probably the correct pronunciation. But so when that happened, then they brought Mark in, Mark Allister.
Right.
See, everybody still today, like, hey, remember when you and me and Mark were partners? Me and Mark were never partners.
Yeah.
It was me and Danny, but people always say that, and they say it to him too.
Right.
And and then I came back, and what really was to be my destiny anyway was the singles. They just wanted to get me over and let me learn, and then I think Fleck had me lined up to be one of his, I'm pretty sure he was going to want me to put him over somewhere. He was being pretty good to me then.
What did you learn from being put with the Horsemen?
I'll tell you this funny thing about it. I never did an interview my whole life. Because Harvey was my manager's Lord Humongous, and Lord Humongous never said a word the whole time he was Lord Humongous. That was the character. He couldn't talk. I mean, we really played that character to the T. Never said a word. We went into the Skyscrapers, a tag team. We had a manager named Teddy Long. He did all the talking, and once in a while Danny would throw in a 10-second part, and they'd say, "Sid, you say something." I said, "No, man, I was really shy about talking in front of doing interviews and stuff like that." I said, "No, man, you guys go ahead. I'll stand here." So it was like that for long. And so then when I became a Horseman, Arn Anderson was the first one. I said, "Look, man," he told me exactly what to say. It was like 3 or 4 words, 5 or 6 words. He said, "You say it like you really mean it." And then, boom, it came out. And before you know it, another one came out. And then I was doing interviews, And that's what I really enjoy, probably the most of all in the business, is doing interviews.
Right.
Or camera work.
Oh, okay. Now, as part of the Horsemen, you had a feud with Brian Pillman at the time. A lot of stuff came out in the sheets that said, and this is to find out truth or not, that you were unhappy with it because of the size difference between you and Brian Pillman. You thought it was wrong that you were feuding with Brian Pillman when you're 2 or 3 times the size. Is there any truth to that?
There's no truth to that, because there was never a feud between me and Brian Pillman. The only discrepancy ever there was this, is I was working with him one time at the Meadowlands. Now, him and the rest of the baby faces in the territory hated working with me in New York or Philly, because they got their asses booed off. Because the building would go Sid, 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 so they hated that. All right, now, the only discrepancy I remember me and Brian had as far as business like that you're talking about is we were in the Meadowlands. Magnum had already came in. Ole was gone. Dusty was coming in, but he wasn't allowed to be there yet because of his contract. But he'd already put in the works for me to start to be the man. And I was already given the ball pretty much at that time. Magnum they wanted me to use my finish. Brian was whining, playing, "I don't know, like, I'm hurting." And then Magnum just went and told him, "No, you're going to take that finish." And that's really the only. Other than that, I only think I worked with Brian maybe one other singles match.
Yeah.
And that was like in a damn little B-town that Atlanta run once in a while, like in Hillbilly Georgia somewhere. I forget what town it was, but it was actually a pretty good match that night.
Right. I remember he laid him out with the powerbomb in the War Games, and that's all. It was just...
That right there. Now see, I laid him out there. Now that was an accident. He went to the dressing room, hurt. He was up around the next day. That guy took a lot of punishment over the years, football and everything. You really couldn't keep him down, but I don't remember being a big deal of it. I remember it looking pretty good on TV.
Yeah.
He was good at stuff,
great.
Really great at stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was we didn't allow for the height of that cage.
Yeah.
When we thought of the finish, when we were laid out the finish. But no, other than that, there really no other business discrepancies.
At that point in your career, it seemed like you were just hitting that breakthrough point.
Mm-hmm.
The way the business is with jealousy and the whatnot, and at the time you being a heel, and you just mentioned, at some talents, the babyface would get booed out of the building when you'd come in there.
Right.
You think there was any maneuvering behind the scenes in the locker room or the community to keep you down?
Well, yeah, the thing about it was, I remember the first time I seen the ugly face of jealousy, and when I was Lord Humongous and Continental, I never knew. The thing about it is, I'm not jealous of nobody. The reason why is because I'm better. I think I am better than everybody. Right. Not as far as I can't do a damn moonsault, or I can't. I don't like doing elbows off the top, which I could if I wanted to, but I'm not because I'd probably break every bone in my body. But as far as having an idea for the business and being able to go out and keep the, to me is I can go, for someone to go out to do 100 spots and whatever, that might be a great feeling. For me, a great feeling is standing there and just be able to move and people, just with a head movement. That to me is more effective than more power to do that than any 1,000 moves.
Yeah, I agree. I guess at the time your run was coming to an end, you were just about to go to the WWF, and you were with Elegante.
Let me tell you what happened. My run wasn't coming to the end. What happened was this. Dusty Rhodes, which I love the guy to death, came to me in Dothan, Alabama. He said, Sid, this is the plans I have. I'm going to make you the world champ. First, you're going to beat Vader, and then you're going to beat Rick Rude. And the way we were going to do it was, I was going to beat Vader, and to make Rick Rude really strong, I came up with an idea that I'd seen on a commercial they did with Chavez, where it was in black and white, and they had somebody else doing the talking, and it just went through a list of like 100 names this guy had beaten. And I thought, man, that would really be cool if we could get Rick over like that. Mm-hmm. Which he was over, and he could get over. He was a great talker and everything, but to be thrown all of a sudden, turn babyface and become the world champion, and then your next opponent has got to be stronger than the first opponent. And Vader's a very strong opponent. Yeah. So I thought that's what we'd do. But anyway, to get back to the story. So he brought me in and told me this. Really, I want you to go into the office. We'll set you up with a brand new contract. I want you at least here for 4 years, 5 years, something like that. That was only on a 1 or 2 year deal. And I said, well, great, man. More money, everything. Okay, yeah. So I'll do it. So they came up with the figure, I forget what it was. And, I swear, I thought to myself, I'd already heard the rumor that Hogan was going to start taking some time off, and that spot was open in WWF. And I still believe one day I will be the single top guy in this business. If not now, I feel I am. I just haven't really been given the opportunity. I think one day I will still be within, say, the top 5 or the top guy always in the territory that I'm in. But I thought, man, this is a good opportunity for me. I've never talked to Vince McMahon. Maybe I should give him a call. So I called him, and right away they put me through. And I told him what was going on. He said, man, he goes, could you fly in tomorrow and we'll talk? So I went in and talked with him. He, gave me the magic wand bullshit story. What do you want? Blah, blah, blah. I told him what I wanted. Of course, there was no guarantee for money, just opportunity. Okay. So, and then I said, I don't know. By the time I got home, WCW had already found out, and they doubled my offer. So I said, all right, I'm not going to call Vince back because now I look like I'm playing the middleman. I don't want to do that. I'm going to take the guaranteed deal, and then I'll go to New York another day. Swear to God on my life, my kid's life, my wife's life. I was dressed, I got up, took a shower, put my nice clothes on. I was walking out the door, and the phone rang. And it was Vince. And my wife said, it's Vince McMahon. I said, oh my God. said, hello? I said, Sid? He said, yeah. He goes, have you signed that contract? I said, no, sir, I haven't, but I'm on my way. I didn't call you back because I didn't want you to think that I was playing in between bullshit game like that, because I don't like that. And the last time I signed with Vince, I didn't track the WCW. I didn't even call him, which I could have. He offered me the deal that I wanted. I said, I'll take it. So I said, well, Mr. McMahon, I didn't want to, but they're offering me a deal I can't refuse. He says, no, I'm telling you, this is your opportunity, and this might be it. And it was like ultimatum. I said, okay, I will. Hung up the phone, walked to drove to WCW headquarters, went in, they handed me the contract, they handed it back, and said, I'm finished. He said, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to New York. And I remember finishing up. Dusty let me finish up early, stay at home, and the agreement would be I'd put the giant over in the pay-per-view before I left.
Right.
But he was going to put me over if I would have stayed. But I left.
Do you think that you left on bad terms as far as they see it?
No, I think because at the time I was, still young, young person, really young to the business, and Dusty even said, he says, I know exactly what you're going through, Sid. He said, and that man really makes things really look good. And, thing was, I was told and talked to, and I was looking at some stuff I could never thought about, but which it never really did come around. But I still did make good money when I worked for Vince, not to the point to where I, look back at it and say it was a mistake.
Yeah.
But it was.
When you got to WWF, what were your first impressions?
I was pretty overtaken by the magnitude of people at the arenas. It was the first, thing that, to me, that was an addiction like I never had before, of having that many people, at the arenas. We didn't have that in WCW. And that was fun, and that was the first time that I really knew when I was drawing money, because I was put in a position to draw money, and was at that time given, my reins relaxed a little bit and let me run,
Right. How were you treated by the other guys in WWF when you first got there?
I was treated good.
Yeah.
As far as I knew, everybody was always nice to me, this and that. But then, you find out real quick who the bullshitters are and who the stooges are and stuff like that. And I've never stooged on anybody. Can't stooge anybody. I can't kiss anybody's ass. I can be your friend, but I can never kiss your ass. That's what I've told everybody. And I've been in this business. And Jake was the first one that fucking got me in some trouble up there. I don't forget what I had said or done. Vince called and got on to me. But, you can't utter a fucking word out there and then it gets magnified,
Yeah.
So that was a little weird. I didn't really like that part of it.
Yeah. Were you surprised as time went on at how different Vince was from your first impression, from the first meeting of him to...
Well, yeah, because I'll tell you what it was. After I'd been up there and just shit never went the way it was, stuff like that. We were in Albany, New York, I think, doing TV or getting ready for a pay-per-view, one of the two. And I just went in, and I'd already talked to the people at WCW that were going to give me the money I wanted to come back. I just went to Vince, and I said, I brought him in a room just like this. I said, Vince, I'd just like to talk to you for a second. He said, all right. I said, I said, we talked, I left, WCW to come here. There was a lot of things promised, and things just haven't worked out. And I can understand your position, maybe why they haven't worked out. I said, but I would like to part ways and go ahead and go on another way, and I'd just like to be able to shake your hand, as man to man, and let me go. He wouldn't do it. He said, no, I'm not shaking your hand. It was like, no, please. I just want to shake your hand. I'm leaving,
Yeah.
But so then he sabotaged me a little bit, but he did make it worth my while as far as financially to stay a little longer. But then after, the thing is, you can have all the money in the world, but like you said, after just another line, and Sid, we're going to make you now the biggest heel in the business. Okay, Well, see, the thing is, I've got an idea about the business too, and how to make someone a big heel or a big baby face. And then when you send me to an arena and you have a guy kicking out my fucking finish, that ain't making me a big fucking heel.
Right.
Okay? So then that's when I walked out. They wanted Ultimate Warrior to kick out of my finish.
That was my follow-up question.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was the reason. I did it the first night we got to Boston, and and the house was the shits, because the last time I'd worked there with Undertaker, it was like sold out there. It was like $40,000 with him. I didn't see him being a big money drawer. And for him, kicking out my finish, and I just told him I'm not doing it anymore. And they said, well, we need you to do it. I said, well, look, you guys are the agents, and this is your options. I'll do it, but then this is my last night. They said, please, Sid, don't put it. I said, no, I'll do it. They said, you guys got to make that decision. So they said, let's do it. So I did it, and it was. I quit after that.
Did you see, because I know when you went to WWF, Hogan was, getting ready to step down, and they had that position there. And then it seemed, when you were in there getting ready to take hold of it, it seemed like all of a sudden Ultimate Warrior came back, and it's like everything stopped for Ultimate Warrior. And is that the way that you saw it at the time, or?
No, no. I just saw it like this, that I was promised so many things, and things just didn't keep coming across. I don't care what other guys are being promised or what they're getting. I'm just concerned with what I've been told.
Right.
Ultimate Warrior, never did anything to me.
All right.
Other than scare me, just talking to him.
Freaky guy, huh?
But you said it all.
Now, at the time, right before WrestleMania, maybe you can put this to rest. WWF put out a lot of things saying that you failed a urine test at the time, and that you were, that they were giving out urine tests for steroids, and that that yours came up negative, but they put you in the main event anyway, and that you should give them a favor for letting them put you in the main event. Was there any truth to that? Or?
No. Matter of fact, the piss test wasn't until after WrestleMania, and the thing was Vince knew exactly what I was on, because I told him. There was no hiding that. Now I was fucking using someone else's piss to put in that bottle until I did get caught.
Yeah.
But the thing about that is, too, we know.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
Who does and doesn't do steroids. And when I was up there before, and I was clean, and never, the last time I was there, never felt a piss test. And, but some guys were a lot bigger than me, and doing a lot less working out. So I knew something was going on.
Yeah. Then from there, you went back to WCW. Were things different the second time around?
Other than the same, man.
Yeah.
It was good. It was easy. It was relaxed. The only thing was it was I didn't have that fulfillment of full buildings, big buildings,
Yeah.
And that was I sort of missed it, but it didn't matter because I had my money every week. But like I said, I'm be the first to want the most money, but I also want to be the most. I want to, say outdraw what maybe I'm being paid.
Yeah.
For how you calculate averages or to payroll. But to me, I remember one night we were in Columbia, South Carolina. The Nasty Boys had just came back in to WCW. I was back in WCW, and Davey Boy was in WCW. We did like a house of $24,000 in Columbia. And I remember the Nasty Boys just, man, look, man, this 24. And still the building was like 2/3, 1/3 full, and the Nasty Boys run back and forth. And I said, guys, this is fucking only $24,000. You didn't draw shit. These people just came on their own.
Right.
None of us drew anything, Right. I couldn't be proud of that.
Right. Now, when you came back, it seemed like WCW was taking a different turn, and they were doing all those promos with the blowing up the ships and stuff like that. When they were doing you and Vader as the team and everything.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel at the time doing those? Coming, from the old school, the old days.
Well, the thing is that's what we were just talking about. You got to do those things, and Ole saw that. And I don't think he really wanted to. I think he was pressured by some of the hierarchy and WCW personnel to do things like that. But I thought that actually was one of those, that was the only time I remember WCW ever selling out a Coliseum that big. And we sold that Coliseum out. First, they had it blocked off for 5,000 seats and held like 10,000. But we sold it out. And I don't know if it was due to the corny little interviews or all the promotion we had into it, or we did have a good matchup in a tag team that night. And we had a great promotion, people working with those casinos, so that helped a lot too. We had a lot of free. I was down there for 9 days, 7 hours a day,
really?
Doing PR work. So, we worked hard on that show.
It seemed like they built up during that run, you and Sting for the title a lot, and you guys wrestled each other in tag matches, and you guys wrestled each other, and it seems like you wrestled Sting a lot off and on throughout your career. What are your memories of your matches with Sting?
The thing about Sting is he was great to work with because he was a great, for me as a heel, I like somebody who can sell and doesn't feel uncomfortable by staying there. And that way I can, look at him like I'm fixing to drill a hole at him and then stop and look at the people, and the people look at me and go, man, see, that's the whole idea is that you got to give this thing called time. I got to give this person or this lady an idea that, man, when I kick this guy, it's really going to hurt. And I got to make it look like it's going to hurt. And she's got to have time to go, God, don't hit him, don't kick him. And then when I finally do, everybody, that is, to me, I loved working with that guy. And that was a lot of fun. I worked with him every night.
It was, I guess, the whole gimmick of Sycho Sid, just from everything that you've been saying so far, it seems like, was that your idea as far as, no, it wasn't?
I didn't like that idea because we all know it was a fucking rib on me. The Psycho deal with the fucking scissors.
Oh, okay.
It was a funny fucking rib, When I went back the second time, I told Vince and everybody, I will not be called Sycho Sid. We were going to call me Sid Vicious, or just, they came with this deal with Sid Vicious is copyrighted by a punk rock singer. I said, the guy's dead.
Yeah, right.
Well, we'll find out his mother owns it, something like that. I said, well, I don't care what you do. I just want to be called Sid. You notice they try to refer mostly to Sid, but then other people would, Actually, I didn't mind the Sycho Sid because as a babyface in some buildings, it really had a great echo when people really got with it. It's something I didn't mind, but I wasn't stupid enough not to fucking know where it really came behind.
Right. Now, I mean, we couldn't do this without asking because it's infamous about the incident with Arn Anderson in Europe. He's had his say in it, in newsletters and whatnot. What is your version or your say of what happened?
I'll tell you exactly what happened. We were in a bar, and I just we were waiting on some food. We were all at the table drinking, and somebody brought up the question. I think asked Arn the question, "What's wrong with our business? Why aren't we drawing like the other company? This and that, this and that." The one thing about me is, man, I mean, if you can't be honest, you can be honest with me because you can't hurt my feelings. Because I'll just say, man, it's not true. I am better than what you think that. But what I thought was wrong with the business, and that's what I said. That's what I'm saying. I said, well, what's wrong with our business? We got a fucking old man named Ric Flair that needs to get the fuck out of the way. Let some of the guys fucking. The thing about the business is that why you have to, revolve talent because people do get burned out. And I think that's proven. Absolutely. And I think that was proven there. The fact that they released him for him to go to WWF, they never would have thought that would have ever happened, but it did. And now, But anyway, so we got to that's what started the argument, and then we got the little, verbal argument, and I think he slung a beer in my face in the bar, and then as I was going to my room, him and a bunch of guys were in the hallway, and he broke a beer bottle and threatened to cut me then. And my room was only just a few rooms down from him. Like I came past his room, took a left, and about 4 doors was my room. We got in there where my food was. I thought it was going to come to the bar, but it actually came to my room. I was sitting there eating part of that sandwich. And I said, man, this motherfucker. I've got a bad temper too. I said, he just fucking threatened me. He hit some beer in my face, and now he just fucking threatened me with a fucking beer bottle. I broke it. I said, no, I've got, draw a fucking line. So there's a chair that sit like that right there, and I fucking ripped the fucking leg off of it. I was going to go in there and whack him in his fucking head a couple times. So when I got back down there was no one in the hallway. and his door was shut. So I knocked on the door. I said, "Come on out here, motherfucker. You know, bring your beer bottle, whatever." Some words were exchanged. I could hardly hear him. I heard him falling around, stumbling around. I thought, I said, "Man, he's fucked up. Bad as I am, you know." And by the time I get to realize what I was doing, I said, "This is fucking stupid." So through the fucking, and you can look at the records that the police had. The stick that he says I hit him with, which never touched him, was 20 feet the opposite way of where the fight happened. And the stick had not one drop of blood, not one dent on it where it had been hit or nothing. And I'll go into the rest of it. So Arn come out, I left, turned my back, heard the door open. I turned around, Arn sitting there with a pair of scissors. And I went just like this. I said, "Man, hey, this has gone too fucking far." And then I just remember him coming after me. All right, so he came after me. I don't really remember getting stabbed in the beginning. And we were in some 2 doors in a corridor, and he backed me up there, and I had nowhere to fucking run. And when he came into me, he got close to me. When he did, I think I hit him one time, and he fell down like at my feet. And when he did, I looked at him, and then out of the corner of my eye, I saw the scissors fall. They were falling out of my stomach. And I got the scar right there. So when I saw the scissors fall, now I realized I'd been stabbed. But I didn't feel it in my face and my hands. But then he lunged back for me a second time, and they were at my feet, and I got him first. And then it happened so fast, it was like a nightmare, you know. And I remember, I think it was somebody said, or him or somebody that walked down the hallway said, "Man, you're killing me," or something. And I had the scissors in my hand. And I looked down and I saw him, and I thought, "Fuck, now he's fucked up." So I threw the fucking scissors as far as I could. I bent over to actually try to pick him up to haul him, you know, to the fucking front desk to call the ambulance. When I did, blood came gushing out of my stomach. And now I realized I've been stabbed, so I'm scared to fucking death. I had all white on. Yeah. So I run down the fucking hallway, and then the rest is rest. These are some other things that people don't know. You know, we were supposed to have been flown on different flights back, put in different hotels. When I was in the hotel room, when I was in the hospital, the police, or whatever you call it, law enforcement over there, they came into my room trying to get me to press charges against him. Huh. And I said, "No, man, I'm not going to press charges against him." I said, "You know, we're both, you know, made a mistake. I don't know how bad he's really hurt. You know, I really didn't." They said, "Well, your friend over is not, don't have one scratch on him." Here I am, I've got exploratory surgery already. I've got stabs in my, I said, "He's not got a scratch on him." And I thought, maybe, like I said, that it happened so fast, I really don't remember it happening. Yeah. And I thought, this motherfucker. So I was going to press charges on him. Yeah. And then that night, a nurse came over to my room and said, "Man, your friend is really messed up." And then I knew the police were lying. Yeah. So I dropped the charges. All right, now we get to go home. I thought I'm in the hotel by myself. I go to, Arn leaves his boots at the hospital. So I took them with me to get him turned down the road somewhere. Yeah. I found out that he was at the same hotel that I was at. So I just left him at the front desk, and he said, "Would you give these to Arn Anderson?" So I went to a machine to get me a drink, cold drink, Coke or something. As I was coming back through, Joey Maggs was there. Joey Maggs was picking up the boots. I said, "Man, is Arn okay?" He goes, "No, man, he's messed up." I said, "Man, tell him I'm sorry. You know, with all the people in the world, Arn was the last person I wouldn't want to do that to anybody unless I had to. Mm. But I did not want, he would have been the last person in the world to die because he had only been good to me as a person. I don't know what he might have said ever behind my back, face to face. He was always a gentleman, and I can only assume that he was like that at all times or felt like that. So I said, "Well, what does Arn say?" And Joey said, "Arn said he was so fucked up he can't remember anything." Wow. And so that's, you know, the true story. All right. If Joey Maggs says that's not, then he's a fucking liar. Because I remember those words exactly. I mean, we both were pretty messed up, you know, to the point that it got like that. Everybody knows I'm not a drinker. I don't drink much. It didn't take a lot of alcohol to get me into the state of insomnia or whatever, where you can't remember it. All right. But that's pretty much how it happened.
Were you told it's a you or him as far as you leaving and him staying, or him staying?
No, what it was they what I understood. Eric Bischoff said that he had a lot of guys threatening to quit if I was brought back and this and that, and me and my lawyer went in to meet with him and one of the head executives, Bill Shaw or whatever, David Bill Shaw, and we talked about it. We didn't really come up with an answer yet. Of course, they later released me, but it wasn't given an ultimatum that I would be there or he would be there or nothing like that.
Right. When you went back to Vince, did Vince take it as you coming back to him that he's in control because you're coming? Yeah.
No, actually, he called me and asked me to come in for a meeting. We had to sit down and talk this and that. And I said, whatever, he wanted me to come in and work with Diesel to try to help him get over it, which I did what I could. I don't know if it worked or not. But going back in there, of course, knowing that I had a little heat with WCW, he was able to fuck with me more. And when you have a family, you sort of have to eat a little shit once in a while. And I'm going to tell you, I was shoveled a lot of shit, and it was hard to swallow, but I had to do it. And to me, it was like, also, I could do it and not let them see it affect me, because it didn't affect me. But it was the stupid things that he would say or do that would affect me.
All right. You were with Shawn Michaels at the time you came back. You were Shawn's bodyguard. Mm-hmm. What was it like going on the road with Shawn Michaels at the time?
I don't think it lasted a week, did it? I think I was his bodyguard 1 week, then I powerbombed him on the neck on the TV following WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. Of course, we know I got the biggest reaction of the building that night.
Yeah.
So
the same night as the NCAA Final Four.
And we outdrew. Yeah. We had a better rating than they did.
He had a killer rating that night too. Yeah. Was that rushed? Because it seemed like it came out of the blue when you turned on him. It's like you were with him for a couple of weeks.
Well, see, that's the thing is they had it planned. Yeah. They knew what they were wanting to do. When I looked at it and when I thought about what the finish was, the match at WrestleMania, I should have been able to read that. And when they did, we went to TVs. They said we want to do that. To me, I didn't care either because I knew what was going to happen. I knew I was going to get the response, and he wasn't. And that's pretty much what it's always been.
Right. At the time, it seemed like that was when, I guess, the so-called clique was coming more into control and more power. Did you have any problems with him?
No, because I'll tell you what. See, me and Kevin, first of all, he started the business. He rode with me a lot. We were pretty good friends. I knew Sean a little bit, not like I knew Kevin. I knew Razor pretty good. The kid was a pretty good kid to me. But the thing is I know that element of jealousy was there. They knew that given a chance, I would walk right over them one night, because...
Which eventually happened.
Well, it always happens.
Yeah.
I mean, even that it didn't happen, it was still happening.
Yeah.
Every night. Yeah. Kevin would be booed and I would be cheered. I don't care where we were at. He never could get the reaction they were dying for to get.
Yeah.
And that's what goes to show today. You cannot program the people like you could years ago, because the wrestling fan is smarter now. And the thing about it is, what happens is the people get a feel, I think, by looking at someone and saying, this guy really has credibility because of whatever reason, the way he looks, the way he acts, blah, 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 whatever. And you can't, you can try to give that to somebody, but it doesn't, you've got to be sort of born with it.
You think those guys in the clique, in your opinion, and knowing them and work with them, you think they take the business too seriously at times?
I don't think you could say they ever took the business seriously because I didn't see anything seriously or really great that they did.
Good point. Yeah.
So no, I don't think they took it seriously. I think it was comical a little bit of some things. Razor's funny. Kevin's one of the funny. Every time I talk to Kevin, the very first thing he says, he makes me laugh. He's like the funniest guy I know as far as natural funny shit. But no, even though I knew that was always there, and I was a little worried for them all the time. We never had a conflict.
Yeah. How did you wind up injuring your neck during that run?
Well, actually, where it happened was, it happened earlier, months before. It was in Indianapolis, I think, or Chicago. It was in Indianapolis. It was in a cage match, and Kevin hit me from behind. And when he did, man, I heard a pop, like, and I went completely numb all the way down. I couldn't get up off the mat, and it just, I didn't know what it was. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then I remember I was in Albany, and me and Bob Holloway were working out, and I couldn't curl. My left arm wouldn't come up. And that really scared me. And then I tried something else and it wouldn't go up. And then I knew something was wrong. And so then I went home and went to one of the head medical clinics in the country, and I had one of the top guys look at it. He said, man, he says, you can never wrestle again. And then he brought in a second doctor in a second opinion. I said, man, you guys, come on, what's the punchline?
Yeah.
He said, no, he says, you're never going to wrestle again. So I called Vince, I called JJ, and said, I'm through. I can't wrestle anymore. And took some classes, went to California out there to Fresno, and got into agriculture, which I had a big background because I farmed for a long time before I ever got into wrestling. And that's where I had some knowledge at. So I wanted to get into chemical cells and got a real good job doing that. And I was doing that, man, for 6, 7, 8 months. And then one day I'd come home from work, and I usually work on Saturdays all the time. During the busy time of farming, Saturdays and Sundays was a good day to be out there with the farmer to help, see if he needed anything. And I came in on a Saturday, and my wife's cousin said, Vince McMahon has been calling here since yesterday, every 5 minutes. And I said, really? I hadn't heard from the guy in 8 months, whatever it was. Picked up, and I said, well, if he calls, I'm not here. So it was just funny. I picked up the phone and called one of my buddies, and the phone clicks. I clicked it over. It was Vince. He said, Sid. Yeah, he goes, Vince. I'm like, hey, Vince. I need a big favor from you. I said, what? He goes, I need you to do a couple shots for me. I said, well, all right. When are they? He said, well, they're tonight and tomorrow. So I got like 40 minutes to make the flight. I said, goodbye. Got my shit. Got dressed in the car. When they picked me up at the airport, wrestled Owen. Next night, wrestled Owen, I think, or Davey Boy. Went home. Didn't hear any more from him for a couple of weeks. Same thing. Came in on a Saturday. Same thing. Man, did you do just a couple of shots? Same thing. I had to fly out real quick. But see, when I went back, I told him I didn't want to come back. I did. I would come back, maybe do some part-time stuff. And Vince said, no, I want you full-time. He said, things are different now. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. So you came back again. You replaced Ultimate Warrior in that 6-man match on the pay-per-view, and which is kind of ironic going back to the day. What were your expectations as far as at that point in your comeback?
Well, I think my very first night in that match almost says it all.
Big time.
Because first of all, I can't take credit for the whole house because there's a lot of people involved in that. There's a lot of great promotion done in that work. But that was a new indoor attendance record for that building. And I think it's pretty obvious who name was being said the loudest.
The crowd reaction was amazing, considering that you hadn't been around for so long.
Exactly. I mean, the thing about that was it was like that every night, everywhere we went.
Right.
And it was, it was fun to see that.
Do you think at that point, at that time, Shawn Michaels was on top and he really had no threat as far as anybody coming up on him? Do you think he noticed the threat and yeah?
Well, I mean, even as this is, we know it's whatever it is to it. I mean, so it's not like football or basketball or baseball. But we know when someone is better than someone else, whatever. And the game of wrestling isn't about wrestling moves. It's all about, drawing money.
Yeah.
And I think when I came back, I think the houses came up. And I know when I was a champ, the houses were 4 times what they were when Shawn was a champ, because I was on the houses when Shawn was a champ. And so I think everybody pretty much knew that.
Yeah. It was amazing because it seemed like it was like it was like the final. This was it. It was like when you finally broke out and became the star that everybody told you and everybody knew that you could be. And then Survivor Series came, and it was you and Shawn in the Garden. And I don't think anybody will ever forget the fact that Shawn got completely booed out of the place. Right. And at the time, he was the top babyface, which was really
not only top babyface, but he's been fucking given every possible show in the fucking world.
Yeah.
See, there's a big difference. When you get everything handed to you, in which I never got a push. I went right into a situation. The business is bring a guy in, you give him a chance to get over. I came in right away. My very first match was main event. I don't, that was my argument. Right? Give me time too. Let me, go 6 months, as a, just killing people or whatever, people like Dusty and Ole did with me. And that's how I got over,
Right.
And it was like, it takes more than a week. It takes 6 months to a year. I don't care who you are. I mean, I'm lucky I could draw money a little bit right away, but if I would have been given really the chance and in my opinion, if I was the babyface and we'd really built Vader up, I think we would have done more business than the company's ever seen in a long time.
Okay. Was management surprised about however you were at the Garden after?
Oh, I seen some of the agents crying. Honestly, man, I was fucking wanted to piss on them. But it's like, oh my God, they were so upset for Shawn, I guess, or something, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah. It was like he legitimately snapped at that point, too, because he was going around the house shows and going off when he was getting booed, because it seemed like at that point he was getting booed more and more. Was there any resentment from him personally towards you?
He never showed me any. It was my face, and, me and Shawn had a, pretty good relationship as far as I look back on it. He was always courteous to me. I was always courteous to him. We respected each other. We helped each other out. He was too tired to do a meet and greet. I'd do it for him. If I was too tired, he'd do it for me. Things like that. So I know there were some, phone calls behind my back.
Right.
But but that's always going to happen. And if you can't, get over that, then you shouldn't be in the business.
All right. Were you surprised? Now, you just talked about it before, about how the houses were up 4 times when you were the champ, and you had to run, and it wasn't like anything was changing, it was only getting better. Were you surprised at the Royal Rumble, at the change, as far as, taking the belt off you and putting it back at Shawn?
No, because that was the idea. I guess I hear say that Shawn's dream was to be in a big show like that in his hometown. All right? The agreement was this. I'd take the belt at Survivor Series and we'd keep it on me as long as I was drawn. Okay. I went to the NAPI convention or whatever it's called in New Orleans, representing the WWF. One day, and Vince and I went in there and we were talking. He said I'd like to for you to drop that belt back to Shawn in San Antonio. I said, well, Vince, you said things were going good, that we want to think about it at least or talk about it.
Huh.
He said, no. He said, what I'm going to do is this. It's his hometown. We're going to drop it on him. He's going to put him on there, and then we're going to do a Thursday Night Raw, and he's going to put it back on you there. And that was my understanding.
Was and that they did have they had the Thursday Night Raw was scheduled, but it didn't go as planned. Shawn came out and gave the classic interview about losing his smile and never wound up, losing the title that night. Was there any personal resentment from you towards Shawn?
No,
from that night?
Not me, because I'll tell you what, that's not my business. That's his business. Yeah. And that's what I don't want nobody in my business. If I want to do a no-show or I want to fucking cuss a promoter out or, I want my freedom to do what I want to do. And if I want to, if whatever, I don't judge anybody by what they do. That's Shawn. If that's what Shawn want to do, more power to Shawn. It didn't bother me at all. Yeah. Of course, it's unprofessional, but it didn't bother me because my pay is the same.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And the only reason I ask is because it's now infamous about the problems that Bret and Shawn had behind the scenes, and it seemed like it stemmed from Shawn not wanting to put Bret back over and Bret taking it personally. That's why I asked with you, and you actually did some 3-ways with Bret and Shawn. Right. Could you sense any tension between the two during the 3-ways?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was put in the middle of some situations like that. But we all came out of it every night pretty good. Always had a good. It was a weird match, but it worked out pretty good most nights.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Vince did an interview recently about Bret Hart. He called him a pain in the ass. That was his exact quote.
Well, I do remember this. I do remember like when we were trying to get things lined up for a match or something like that. It would always be at the last minute. Bret would come in and it was just like every little thing he had to tinker with. Well, let's do like this and that. And sometimes I just see Vince, he look, breathe. But the thing about that is too is that, the business, for Bret though, at least he was trying to take up for himself. He knew he was being gouged from someone, somewhere.
Yeah.
And whoever he thought was doing it, maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But so I don't resent Bret for doing that either because that's his life he's trying to take care of. That's what he thinks he needs to do business.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me. It never bothered me one way or the other.
Yeah.
He was always only a gentleman to me. And when we worked together, it was easy. There were no arguments. There were never discrepancy of how a match went.
Just one-on-one.
It was one-on-one. When I goofed up, he let me know, in a gentleman-like way.
Yeah. And from there, from the Thursday Thunder or Thursday Raw, they did the four-way, the fatal four-way match when Bret wound up getting the belt and then wound up giving it to you. Were you surprised to see Bret get the belt, or did you know that it was coming to you? You knew it was coming to you a couple of days later.
Well, I knew I was getting it back.
Oh, okay.
Through Bret.
Oh, okay. Did he know that, or
I think
to your knowledge?
I think he had to have known it.
Yeah.
I would hope that he'd known it.
Yeah. It seemed at the time that the title was changing hands like every couple of weeks. Was that the way it was supposed to be, or was it just management just changing their mind every 5 minutes?
Who knows?
Yeah.
That's really a hard question to answer. The thing about it was, I was told again once I got the belt back, as long as I was doing good business, that we were going to keep it on me.
Yeah.
And I got to WrestleMania and it was dropped to me. I was going to drop it.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, fine with me. Let's do it. And that's enough.
Yeah. Then from there, did you have the car accident shortly after?
Right after that, we were going from Montreal to Canada. That's when I flipped the car.
Okay.
And that's when the complete left side of my body was completely numb.
Wow.
And at first, when I'd gotten home, I was put in the hospital for almost 24 hours, but I was on machines that they thought I had a stroke.
Wow.
But they'd taken x-rays of everything but my neck. And then the next day I went to a neurologist. That was the very first thing they x-rayed. They saw the broken vertebrae was pinching up against my spinal cord, and that's what was causing the numbness in my left. I wouldn't suffer any strength in it.
Yeah.
I just couldn't feel anything.
Yeah.
I mean, everything on the left side of my body. When I say left side, I mean, really.
Wow.
That's weird.
Yeah, definitely. Especially being an athlete.
Right.
The whole left side. Now, you came back for what didn't seem to be long. You came back on a Raw and you wrestled The Undertaker.
Right.
And then it seemed like after that you left again. Did you rush your comeback as far as your injuries, do you think?
The first injury was a back injury.
Okay.
And that wasn't a fucking injury. First of all, it was a bullshit fucking deal with Bruce Pritchard and that fucking fat ass Jim Ross. My back was fucked up because I was taking those suplexes off that fucking top rope for Bret every night. And I'm a big guy, and it just seemed like every night my back was landing right on that piece of iron or something. And I was just totally wore out. All right. After WrestleMania, I told Vince, I said, I don't want to go to that damn overseas to Saudi Arabia bullshit because I knew there weren't going to be people there.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this would be a perfect time for me to get my back healed up. And I had one-day surgeries. I had a series of 3 of them I needed to do. And I was taking an epidural, which is a big long needle into your back, for cortisone injections, which would alleviate the pain for at least a year. So when they came back from overseas, they said, well, have you got your release from the doctor yet? And I said, no, I haven't. He said, well, man, we need you to make Monday Night Raw this coming Monday. I said, well, I can make it, and I'll just go to the doctor when I get back. And they said, no, we need you to go right now to the doctor and have a look at it. Now, this is before they started the cortisone treatments. Yeah. I said, guys, if I could just have a couple, don't worry about my back. I'm telling you right now, if I go to the doctor, they're probably going to want to do surgery. And I was, I knew that. That's how messed up it was. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, my doctor can't even get me in today. I was leaving to go to a family reunion for Saturday, and I was going to be back Sunday, and I was going to fly out Monday for Monday Night Raw. So as soon as I hung up the phone, they called me back like 30 minutes later. They had actually called my own doctor and scheduled. They said, we really need him in there. Could you please get him in? So I said, okay, I'll call you back in about 30 minutes because I was only 5 minutes from my doctor's office. Went in, sure enough. He said, man, you're like 6 weeks, 8 weeks off or something. So I called him back and see what I fucking told you. And see, that's what started my bullshit there, was them two fat fucks getting in my way. And see, Vince, knowing it or not knowing it, if he does know it, then that makes him a dumb fuck too, to take a talent like me and just fuck me off like that, because I was willing to come back to work without a fucking doctor's release, because we've all had to do that. And we're all going to have back problems. You have to work around them. Right. It was nice to get those cortisone shots, but that's just a doctor's way of making a quick fucking couple grand. Right. You know what I mean? It gives you temporary relief, they say, for 1 year, but after that, it's going to come back anyway. And the thing is, we all know, once you've been in the business as long as we have, you got an injury, it's going to go away sooner or later. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if you're going to fucking cry about every injury you have and not be able to work every night because you got an injury, like some people are, then you never fucking work. Yeah. But that's where that injury came in. It wasn't really an injury. It was just I needed a little time off. And then when I came back, we had the wreck, and that's when I had the real surgery, when I had a new vertebrae put in my neck. So
basically, there was no injury, just the fact that they, all of a sudden, they needed you.
What it was is they could, I don't know what reason in the world, but they wanted me to have a doctor's release for my back before I came back. I guess for whatever reason, they wanted to fuck with me or something. But I said, man, guys, I'll come back, and then I'll go to the doctor, and I'll just say, I'm okay, and we'll go on. He goes, okay, well, that's what we'll do. And like I said, 5 minutes later, he goes, we'll just talk to your doctor. He said, he'll squeeze you in. I said, okay. I didn't want to go to the doctor because I knew exactly what they wanted. Yeah.
I think, and I could be wrong, the last time that you were on Raw was the Texas Raw, maybe San Antonio Raw, or with the mystery partner deal with Steve Austin that you came out. There was some talk that you had collapsed that night.
Yeah, I did.
In the locker room.
What it was, the thing was, I was, like I said, completely numb on the left side of my body. I couldn't even hardly feel a foot brake paddle. Almost wrecked on the way over to that fucking building. Yeah. That's how messed up I was. And that's what really pissed me off, too, is Vince comes by and goes, man, you okay? I said, no, I'm not fucking okay. I told Jim Cornette that. I told all your stooges that. And you didn't get that fucking message? Well, no, if I knew you were this sick, there's no way I'd have you here, Sid. He's like, okay. Yeah. Walk on.
So at that point, it seems now that the WWF has put out anyway through their grapevine, whether it's their 900 numbers or their internet, that Sid's an injury case. That Sid's bad because Sid's always claiming that he's injured. What would be your response to that?
Well, the facts are as this. Yeah. I had one back injury. All right. It was one I didn't want any time off. Other than that, I knew that trip overseas would be the great time for WrestleMania and be a good time to take a little time off and let my back heal. I was ready to come back to work right away. They're the ones then sent that damn process into that 8-week fucking deal where I had to go into those long, cortisone treatment deals, which I could have done at my own time on my days off. I didn't have to do it. If they would let me done it my way, I would have been back to work the very next day, right. The day they needed me. But when you force a doctor, the thing about doctors are too, doctors don't like people like WWF people because they don't care about you. Right. And the doctor's job is to care about you. And that's what the doctors even said to me. These guys are trying to rush you into something. And so, I had one injury. And I had a serious injury, and I had to fucking have an operation. If that's being injury prone, then yeah, maybe I am injury prone. But I didn't ever fucking miss a show. Didn't ever fucking do what I had to do to fucking help the company.
They promoted a match with you and Bret Hart in the pay-per-view that never happened with everything. It was right after either Bret had won the title or Bret had full-fledged turn. At the time they promoted it, do you think that they knew that you weren't going to be there, but they promoted it anyway because of the way that you're back and the way that everything was?
I really don't know because I never heard of that. I never heard of that
really
match being booked.
Really, it was on an In Your House,
right?
And they ran the promo. Maybe they only ran the promo 2 weeks for it, but it was at least 1 week, if not 2. It was right after Brett had turned, and it was to be you and Brett. It was either right after he turned or won the belt. It was one or the other, and it was to be you and Brett. And then they all of a sudden they changed it, and then I think that's when they changed it to the Steve Austin match that they had at one of the In Your Houses. But I could be wrong. But I know that they ran a promo with you guys.
No, I never knew anything about it.
Oh, okay. So as of today, March 1st, where does your status lie with WWF, your contract status?
Well, legally, I do have a release, and then legally I don't have a release because what we're trying to do is just get the final details of the merchandising worked out of how many months or how many years they're going to owe me for what's usually a general time frame is 2 years of what they pay you after you leave. So that's what we're just trying to get them to say.
Right.
And they won't return my lawyer's calls, and he's been calling, and the thing was, I told him I'm in no hurry because of my neck, but now I am in a little bit of a hurry. But as far as legally, I can go to work anywhere I want.
Okay. Do you think after everything you did for WWF, especially, it seemed when you were in there when they had those 4 ways and the 3 ways, it seems that was their hottest period as far as maybe not hot in a money sense, but hot in the sense that everybody was watching every week because
no, it was hot in the money sense.
Was it hot in the money sense too?
I mean, we were drawing what I thought because I was there before. When it was like, man, worse I couldn't imagine it ever being that bad. And then when I came back, it seemed like it jumped back up real good. It just kept getting better and better and better. When we kept adding things like me and Brett, me and Sean, blah, 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 me and Taker, me and Austin. That was the thing about it was, too, that was a proving point. I drew money with everybody I worked with, Austin, to Mankind. Me and Mankind did $180,000 in Nassau. And the time before that, Vader and Sean was on top of $40,000. So it's a big difference, and there's no issue there. So I think that the one thing, too, is everybody knows that I really have a strong following in the North. Mm-hmm. And that's where I've really drawn most of my money.
All right, definitely. I mean, it just with all that being said, how do you take it with everything that, I mean, basically, Vince called Brett a pain in the ass. It seems like they're being a pain in the ass, as far as you go. I mean, is it not a slap in the face for all the,
No, it's not a slap in the face. It's an incentive for me because let me tell you something. I wake up every morning, Monday through Friday at 4 o'clock. And at 10 minutes to 5, I'm working out, my first workout. And then from there, I take a shower and I go to my second workout. And then I run bleachers at 9:30. When my foot touches the top of that bleacher every time, that's Vince. And one of these days, see, the thing about it is I will outlive Vince, and I will wrestle longer than his reign too. So I will have the last word. Either we work for him again one day and he has to bow to me or give in to me, or I'll be working for the other company, just shoveling more fucking shit on him that he can't get off. And no, it's not a slap in the face, and it's an incentive for me. It makes me. The thing about it was I was in the gym 3 days after surgery. Right? So I was supposed to be in bed for 3 months, bleeding down my fucking neck. When I had a brace on, everybody in the gym thought I was nuts. But I couldn't do cardio, so I had to walk, and I had to limp because of the bone in my hip. But then things got better, and I started running, and it's only the thing about me is I take everything in life, adversities I love, because it's too easy to say, hey man, things are good. It's better quality, a better feeling when you're down and you reach back up one more time and you prove to everybody and yourself again, you are what you think you are.
Yeah. So you're not ruling it out that you're not saying I would never work for WWF again.
I'm not ruling it out, but I really doubt that I could ever work there again. Because if I did work there again, there would be a lot of fucking changes, especially in that fucking bogus contract that they write up. And I would almost have to write up a contract verbally making them obligated to everything that they say they promise, this and that. See, that's something WCW was willing to do when I was there. They were willing to guarantee me, when I was the champion, I got a $50,000 bonus or say whatever. I should have said that, but when I was the champ, even on top of my contract pay, those were incentives that we have. Not that Vince has always paid me well. I don't have any, I never can say I wasn't paid well, but you always feel like, for me, I always feel like I'm almost there, and then like that little fucker pulled me right back down, and I was like, man, why me? What did I do? I work hard. I get up in the morning. I make all your fucking shows. I make all your personal appearances. Nobody else wants to do them. I work on my days off. Why can't you let me have that 1-2 year run that I'm looking for? So
it was wild because it seemed in '97 that you got there, then you pull you down, then you got there, then you pull you down.
You know why? Because I'm not a product of Titan Sports. I'm an entity of myself, and that might sound a little cocky. But just a few of us are like that. Yeah. All right. That is why Vince's resentment has towards me. And that's why I don't think Vince would probably never hire me again, because he knows I am bigger than him.
Yeah. Just 3 more questions and wrap it up. You said you wanted to be a booker someday. All right, play the role of booker here with everything, and you've been in all roles in this situation, with everything that's happened between Shawn and Brett, and it came down to letting one go and keeping one of the other. If you were the booker for business at the time, what would you say? What would your decision be? What would you tell Vince if you were Vince's assistant booker?
I'd keep them both.
Yeah.
Business wise.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing about business that I was actually, one of the things Vince sort of taught me was business is business, and that I might not personally like the way a guy acts, but we can get around that. If he can draw me money, I'm going to keep him. So the answer to that was I would try to keep both of them.
Yeah. Other question. The other 2 major wrestling companies in the United States, ECW and WCW, would you work for either of them? Or?
Well, it was funny you said that, because I was supposed to be in the pay-per-view tomorrow night.
Yeah.
And I was given an offer of what I was going to be paid. Chris Candido was doing the middle work. I said, look, Chris, I said, tell Paul to call me and stop, chicken dick. Paul did call me. However, it was the night that I was working for Lawler, and I did try to call him several times from my mobile phone out of my truck, but his phone that I was getting kept saying it was out of reach or something like that. So when I got home, it was 12:30, 1 o'clock, so I didn't call him back, and I've never heard back from him. But actually, I did hear back from Chris. He said it's all, came up with this weird deal about a script they had to write out about this and that, and said, well, this is what we wanted to do was have a tag match. You be the mystery partner, and we have Leaf come down and win the match. I said, hold on a minute. I said, nothing against nobody. I said, but I'm not coming into a territory and nobody's going to win my first match for me.
Yeah.
I said, if you want me to draw money or come in and help a company or a territory draw money, that's not how you do it. What we do is we come in and I beat somebody, and then you bring Bigelow down, you have him powerbomb me through the fucking ring or something like that. But that's who they wanted me to work with down the road was Bigelow and Shane.
Yeah.
So, the thing was I should have beat Shane, and Shane should have brought Bigelow down. They did the damage to me, and then maybe double powerbomb me, which my idea was.
Yeah.
And it was all a go, as far as I knew. And they said, we'll send you some tickets, this and that. And I never heard from them.
Wow. What do you think of the ECW style?
I've never really honestly seen it, man.
No?
I've heard about it. I can't imagine anybody being more brutal than me, given the chance.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be a place that I could have fun.
I definitely think you could.
Yeah.
Definitely think you could.
And I think I'll probably go work there some.
Yeah.
Paulie, he's going to, me and Paulie go back a long way. He's actually one of my first managers. He was my first
Really?
manager. Yeah, he managed me, Lord Humongous.
Oh, wow. Okay.
For just a couple months that I worked there before I went to Continental.
Oh, okay. And I guess today, I don't know what it would be. What would be your biggest regret as far as the wrestling business?
Maybe my biggest regret would be not giving Dusty the chance to do what he wanted to do with me, and staying, there, and he was promising me everything Vince was promising me too, and I think he would have really done it. And I sort of wish I'd also have gotten the relationship with Dusty I would have gotten within at that time too, and I could have been the, most hated, because Booker liked me the most. That was what it was with Ole. Ole liked me the most, and so people sort of hated me for that. Dusty came in from the same situation. He saw Dusty was a businessman. Him and Magnum, I fell in love with both of them right away, and that's probably my biggest regret, is because maybe if I would have stayed, maybe I would have finally got to that pinnacle that I knew I should be, and I would have stayed there.
Yeah.
That is the thing that is in my mind.
Wow.
Before you close, what do you think of Bill Goldberg? A lot of people are comparing him to you.
I think I've only seen him wrestle one time. I think he's got a great look.
Really intense.
He's intense. He's good. He's a good wrestler for 2 minutes. I've seen.
Right.
He'd be somebody I'd love to not work with in the match, but I would love to teach him how to talk and things like that. I'd like to see somebody like him in 10 years from now when I'm out of the business that I could, and that'd be a good guy I'd like to mold.
Right. Everyone says he's the next Sid.
Yeah, that guy is next Sid. He needs about 6 more inches.
Well, that's it. I want to thank you for taking time out. It's late.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to thank you for all your time.
All right,
It's
man.
very informative.
Thank you.
And good luck with wherever your travels may take you. It is a pleasure to be joined once again by the man known as Sid Vicious. Sid, welcome back to the shoot.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. We're going to pick up where we left off 10 years ago with our last shoot. And after we did our last shoot together, and you talked a little bit about ECW and the shoot, just your views from watching it, and you actually wound up in ECW.
Sure did.
And how did that all come about?
Well, I got a call from Paul, and he was, said, "Hey, I'd like to bring you in, sort of, unadvertised in the beginning." For what I think I know of the business, I think he was really doing a great job of the way he was using me. It was pretty much, like I said, usually unannounced, unadvertised. I'd show up, powerbomb a bunch of guys, especially at their TV tapings, and then they were doing some advertising for some of the house shows. But this was the problem. We had a deal worked out where, say, $100 a week. I can't remember what it was, and if I worked over 2 days or whatever like that, then it become extra money.
Sure.
Well, I told him I was willing to work as many days as possible, and then he would call me and say, "Hey, what about this weekend?" Well, this weekend I'm already booked, but he'd already advertised me for what was some of those towns, but I can't remember now, but outside New York a little bit. And then people started giving me the rap of doing the no-show, which I didn't know I was advertised. If I knew I was advertised, I would have made the show, because we were also trying to work a deal. If he could pay me, to say, up to $250,000 a year, then I was going to be a permanent figure.
Oh, okay.
So that's, he was trying to talk me into that, which I was trying to talk myself out of, because I was looking to go to one of the 2 big companies at the time.
Right. When you came into ECW, obviously you're the veteran when you walk in there. Were you willing to help a lot of the younger guys and maybe put over some younger guys along the way?
Well, you know what? Yeah. Let's see. I think sometimes the word veteran is overused and overexposed and used too loosely. I was, I think we all, all of our jobs, a beginner or, veteran, come in, this is how simple the business is. You come in, they spend a lot of time getting you over. You get into a process after that of maybe hopefully be in a position to draw money, get into the middle of something. And once you've had your run, it's given to give back. So then you put people over who will hopefully help them get up to the next level.
Sure. Were you surprised when you came into ECW at how well you were received by the fans?
I really was. I'll tell you truthfully, that was one of the most it's probably the second most fun I've had in the business.
Wow.
First fun, most fun I think I ever had when I first started down in Continental. Reason why that was there, because no pressure. I didn't know what jealousy was. I didn't know people didn't like me because of, for whatever reason. So a lot of those things were hidden. But ECW, after knowing some of those things, those guys were all really nice to me. From Sabu to Rob Van Dam, Woodman Gang, just all the guys there were just super, super cool to me, and went out of the way to really make me look good. And got to do, ECW is sort of like, Saturday Night Live.
Right.
You can get away with a lot more things than you could at 8 o'clock show. Like spitting and things like that, and the fans love that kind of stuff. And just that atmosphere was just ideal for me.
Sure. Now, when did you realize in your run there that the company was having some financial problems?
Well, I knew, talking to Paul, that they were struggling a little bit, because a lot of people weren't getting their money. A lot of people checks were bouncing, stuff like that. Even one of mine bounced, but I give you a story about it. One time I was doing an independent show for Mike O'Brien, and they were doing a television taping at Harlem.
ECW?
Yeah.
Okay.
The little venue they always do, that little place. It was really nice. Well, I showed up unexpectedly.
Queens.
Queens.
Yeah, I had a question about that, but okay.
Well, I showed up and Paul was freaking, because I was with Tommy Rogers. Tommy Rogers was owed some money as well. Of course, Tommy forced him to give him cash. I said, Paul, you can send me another check. I know, you've been good to me. I'm not here to worry about my money. I'm just here to drop in and say, what's going on? Why haven't you called me? Things like, why are you, I'm getting the rap of not doing no shows, and you haven't told me that I was booked on any of these shows. And he was so paranoid he wouldn't let me, let anybody see me through the curtain and stuff like that. I think it sort of got blown out of proportion. I came there to strong arm some people, which I didn't. I came with Tommy Rogers, who's, a little bitty guy, myself.
Right.
And never even took any money. He sent me my money and the check was good.
Oh wow, yeah, I had a question about that, because there was a story that you went there and strong on them for the money.
Well, believe it or not, like I said again, Tommy Rogers walked out with cash.
Okay.
He wouldn't take a check. I said, Paul, just write me another check, send it to me.
Yeah.
That's how little I cared about it.
Wow. One of the more memorable matches you had there is a match you had against the Dudleys. What do you remember about working with the Dudleys?
Was that at Asbury Park?
I believe it was.
Yeah, pay-per-view?
Yes.
Yeah, Sabu was involved. That's the thing about it, is those guys all were, Bubba Dudley, and then it was Devon.
Right.
Devon was a really super nice guy. Bubba, a little bit of a prima donna. I hate saying that, but I don't know if it was, maybe he was jealous of me coming in. I don't know, maybe that's just his personality. I've got a personality that people take the wrong way too, because I'm quiet to myself a lot, until I get to know people. But they were a lot of fun to work with. Sabu, that made it a lot of fun too.
Cool.
And this is what is bad about the business. I didn't realize it till at the end that they were setting me up for a table deal for Sabu. All they had to do is ask me. I don't mind. And if anybody really looks back and sees the things I've done, I have honestly volunteered to do more jobs than most people have done. Like, because especially if I was main event and they came with a DQ or a double count out, I said, no, I'm putting the guy over, especially as a heel.
Mm-hmm.
I said, this is not the way to end the show. So that's the thing, is that they would just presented that to me and not try to sneak that in, I still would have done it.
Yeah. As not that I want to go in a different direction, but since you talked about as a heel, and you were one of the most successful heels in the business for your time period, are you surprised at the way that the heel in the business today has changed from being the cool heel to actually being the traditional heel in the role that you played for so many years and so successfully?
Yeah, I'll give you, I don't think a lot of people remember this. What they call that was a tweener.
Okay.
Or in between babyface and heel. And that was somebody who could work with babyfaces and heels. I was the very first one really to take that role on when I won the belt from Shawn Michaels. And what it was, I was told I was going to be a babyface for an extended period of time. Then after that, heel, et cetera, et cetera. Well, a lot of people don't realize, actually that was supposed to have been Shawn and Vader in that match.
Okay.
But I'd worked with Vader in a house show at the Gardens prior to that and got such a reaction from the people. When I walked out, Vince was standing there. I knew without a word that he changed his mind who was going to be in that spot.
Wow.
No, they came to me saying, we're going to put you in this. No, we're going to let Vader go over tonight because we're going next time we're here, he's going to be beating Shawn. And then at the pay-per-view in Indianapolis, you'll put Vader over to, for him to meet Shawn at SummerSlam. I said, fine. That's perfect. And so when I walked out that night to the walkway there, I looked on Vince's face. I knew it was changed. So it was a month or so later, we're in Indianapolis getting ready for the pay-per-view, and they pulled me over to the side. Hey, things have changed, and I told them what things had changed too. I knew it.
Yeah.
You just get those kind of feelings.
Yeah, and you actually did the tweener role as well in the middle of the Bret Hart, Steve Austin stuff too.
Right, and that was a little, for me too, as a heel, when it was just heels and just baby faces, I was always a tweener, especially up in the northern market.
Mm-hmm.
I was always perceived or cheered, and the baby faces hated that, having to work with a guy. And I don't know if you know this yourself, but if you're a baby face and you got 10,000 people cheering you, you got one person booing you, it really blows your mind. Not mine. It doesn't bother some people.
Right.
I've seen people like Bill Goldberg just literally go nuts, cussing the person, shut up. I said, hey man, and then he's working with me and we get north and more people booing. But I like that. As a heel, it's acceptable. You accept the cheers and the boos. But that's always been my favorite role, is the heel.
Did you find that with Shawn, when you were working with Shawn back then, that he would get real frazzled when the crowd would start going nuts for you?
Not Shawn.
Okay.
Not Shawn. Shawn was I don't know if people know Shawn as well or not. Shawn is he's a giver.
Okay.
He gives out, he gives to you. He makes me, like when we were triple threat matches, me and him and Bret.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying, I've said it before, working with Bret was like pulling teeth.
You said that in the last shoot interview.
Yeah, and Shawn, when he saw that, me and Shawn would look at each other. We just sort of say, hey, we'll work around this. And Shawn would go out of his way to really make me look super cool in the match. I'd do the same for him, and we'd do the same for Bret as well.
Wow. Going back, wrapping up with ECW, if the money issues weren't a problem and the advertising wasn't a problem, would you have stayed there for a while?
Yeah, I really could have, man, because it's sort of the same scenario that's going on with TNA now. You weren't, the workload was a lot less, and then it was a lot more fun. And I don't know what TNA's like, but I'm saying I know the workload was less. But working for ECW, man, it was like starting over from the small territory days, but you were making really good money.
Now, what were your thoughts on Paul as a booker? Because you went back with him to Continental.
Yeah. I thought Paul was a heck of a booker myself. And again, he had no reason to do anything but, treat me as a regular employee or a regular, one of the boys. And, he did, in my opinion, everything perfect with me, to build up, to really draw some money. And he was doing it right.
Now, then you wound up returning to WCW at some point, and I know in the last interview that we did, you seemed more towards going back to the WWE than you were to WCW. So how did that come about?
Well, I just got a call. What it was, after doing ECW for a little bit, of course, at the time, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and those guys were, Kevin was booking. Good friend of mine, him and Scott said, hey, let's get this guy in here. He's back. Looks good, and there's no sense of letting him go. And Eric Bischoff gives me a call, has a private meeting, flies in his own plane there in West Memphis, where I'm from, and we met and talked, and it was a done deal.
Yeah. Now, did you see this when you went into WCW? Did you see this as some kind of vindication towards the way that things were left with the WWE? Because in the last interview, you said you wanted to prove something to Vince and come back and do your thing.
I think sometimes when we're angry or upset, and I try to take this business as it really is, and even though I do, I still get upset about things I shouldn't get upset about, and I get upset at Vince, and I feel like I was shafted a little bit there, but then again, I felt like I was treated pretty fair on top of everything too. It's more of a business than WCW.
Sure.
Only thing about it is I never really could prove anything or say get back at Vince so much work for WCW, only that I couldn't work for him. because what the really turn on about working for Vince was, if things went right, then you got to feel the power of drawing people, and that to me is more addictive than cash flow or anything.
Wow.
To know that you walk in that building and the majority of people say thanks for the house, and you were a big part of it because you know what it was before you came into the town before, and they tell you, and to me, I've not ever seen a company that can do that for anyone else like they can. How many other companies that had, like back when I was last worked for them before I had broke my neck, we were selling out everywhere. We even sold out next at Detroit. Me and Brett in a cage match, just a house show when the Detroit Red Wings were next door in the last game of the Stanley Cup. So when things are good like that, man, that's so rewarding.
People, and let me ask you your opinion on this. People talk about the change and the ratings war and everything, and a lot of people point to Steve Austin and Bret Hart. My opinion is the cage match that you had with Bret on Raw at the end of the year that year was really the turning point with the result and just the way you saw Austin interfere and the cursing at the end. Do you look back on that and think the same, that match was very pivotal to the change in business?
I think that and the whole beginning up, when I took the title from Shawn, I think from then on was the big change for the business. Is that's when we saw that we could have a tweener like myself, and I could work with Undertaker one night, or Shawn the next night. Then I could work with Bret. I could work with Steve Austin. I could work with heels like Mankind. Me and Mankind had no issue at all. Was at Nassau, sold the place out. I know it was a good house. I think the time before that I was just advertised. Actually, they sort of did a swerve. They were trying to make the people believe Bret Hart was coming out.
Okay.
And that's when Jim Anvil Neidhart came out.
Okay.
And the house wasn't that great that night. The next time around, I'm the world champ, worked against Nick, and sold the place out.
Wow.
People like Pat Patterson, who I have a lot of respect for, he reluctantly had to look at me and say, "Hey, man, you really are the man."
Now, coming back into WCW, and we went into it in a lot of detail in the last shoot. Did you have to resolve any issues with Arn Anderson before you started coming back to the shows?
They brought me in the very first night in Baltimore, that pay-per-view, as a mystery partner, and I was even wearing a hood and a black suit, long sleeves and stuff like that. And then they said, "We're not going to do this mystery thing. We're going to let you come out, and then we're going to take your hood off, and we want everybody to know who you are." So they pulled me and Arn to a room, and because no one knew I was coming, other than Eric, really, and maybe a few office people. And a lot of people don't realize about this whole thing of Arn. And I've said it before, Arn was one of the people who really helped me out in my career. He's the one who first, helped me out with my interviews, which is a big part of my persona, my character. It was just an unfortunate chain of events that led into that horrible night. Of course, Arn has gone on record that I've heard has always had great things to say about me. I've always had great things to say about him. The one thing I could do, and I have said, and I've said it 1,000 times, that I just wish it never had happened, and if it had to happen, I wish it hadn't been with him. It was just a horrible accident. No, not an accident. It was just a horrible, horrible deal.
Right. And so when you went in the room with Arn, everything was cool with you guys?
Everything was cool. Arn was an agent. He used to, Arn always gave me the greatest, most respect. Whenever we were going finishes, he'd ask me my opinion. I'd always ask him because I know he can make finishes real exciting. I think him and Ric Flair may be some of the best finish men in the business, coming up with the little bitty things that don't sound like that much, but man, it turned out to really make the whole match. I can give you one, for example, when me and Flair was working against Piper and Hogan.
Okay.
And I forget how it went, but the finish went for a cover on Hogan and Piper won, and Hogan was going to cover for Flair. I was coming to whack him, pull him over, and let Flair do it, then kick out, then finally catch the falling Rick. All Rick added to that was a chair shot. And then it made the whole finish. I mean, it went from blah to wow. And I just, when you sit back and you think you know a little bit about the business, you go, man, that one little thing's not going to make that big of a difference. But man, it did.
Wow.
It really did.
Wow. Now, being back in WCW for the first time in many years, how did things change in WCW since the last time you were there?
Really not at all.
Wow.
Then it got to be a bigger production.
Mm.
You know, everything was on a bigger scale. Our vignettes, our little things like, I'll give you an example. When that time me and Randy Savage was trying to get Gorgeous George away from Kevin Nash.
Okay.
Man, it looked like a small, not a small movie set. It looked like a movie set. They had all the,
Right.
I mean, that's something that they really was doing really a lot of really
Wow.
big high production things.
Wow. Now, you and Arn squashed everything. Did you sense any heat from maybe some of Arn's friends that didn't want you back?
You know, not want me back in WCW. Now, when it first happened, there was a lot of people that didn't want me back there because of what happened.
Right.
But after the time had gone by, those people have forgotten it. I can't think of anyone.
Okay.
Now, I only can go by what I've heard. I've heard Ric Flair said some bad things about me, like I guess because they just did this Horseman.
We're going to talk about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we'll talk about it when it gets there.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to get your thoughts on that. Now, at the time you were in WCW, at this time, was Vince Russo in charge, or was it just Eric?
When I first got there, it was just Eric, and then Vince Russo came in.
Okay. Now, did things change for you at all because of course, one guy has his guys, the next guy has his guys.
Well, it wasn't so much, and that was something else. I've always been one easy to get along with, and as time went on and I got more mature, I was even easier to get along with. So that makes me viable and someone worth working with. So Vince Russo was, attached to me right away.
Okay.
And we knew each other from the WWF days. The only thing is, and I'm sure you'll ask it, but I'll go ahead and throw it out there.
Sure.
I just thought, Vince Russo, first of all, wasn't the genius everybody put him out to be. And he did such a poor job, or a different type of job, that we all thought it was sabotage. No one could be this bad consistently. I'll give you an example. We're in Little Rock, and that's my home state. And when I come out, they'd start the hog chant. And he had me come out, Kevin was dressed up like Vince McMahon, and Scott was dressed up like someone else, I can't remember who it was. And they wanted me to come out and say, the line was like this, I'm not as dumb as I'm not as dumb as you think I'm dumb. So, something really stupid.
Yeah.
And then I said, is this really what you want me to say? Because this isn't going to help us draw money.
Yeah.
But Bill, what was the guy's name?
Bill Bush?
Bill Bush. He come in. Now, Sid, you're one of the leaders here. I'm asking you to do everything they ask. Because if you do it, then it'll look like, everyone should do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I always had that. And I don't mind. That's part of the deal. And if I'm that well respected by the big guy, I'm saying, I'm going to do what you're asking me because you're paying me a lot of money. So I did it,
Yeah.
And those were silly things. I just didn't think, that had any reason to be part of anything. It was a waste of time. Television is so important.
Yeah.
If I could have, but that's how I'd say.
As a wrestler in the company, as somebody who's been around the business for a long time, what did you think when the whole David Arquette debacle went down and he was wearing the WCW belt?
I don't have a problem with that, believe it or not. I know the business and I've seen it, and the only way it's going to get better is we have change. Vince was the first person to use entertainers in the business to draw money or make things exciting or bring a different group of viewers to the scene. So I didn't really have a problem with it.
Okay. Now, when you came into WCW, you were paired with Randy Savage.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on being paired with Randy for a while?
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I've always really enjoyed being by myself. I had a great time, of course, in my early years working with Danny Spivey and tagging up with the Horsemen and stuff like that and things like that. But working with Randy it was probably a little more fun than the rest of them. He was it was funny too. I know you've heard the stories about interviews. When
Sure.
you're doing an interview with Randy, he's always got to try to end the interview. I don't care how many seconds it lasts. I went, and we're done. And yeah, so this was like. Who was really fun to watch do that with him was Scott Hall. Scott would never stop. He'd go, oh yeah, and you'll buy back, and it was a never-ending deal. They had to redo the interview because 2 minutes over. But other than that, I mean, we had a lot of fun. He was, was talking the story to Dallas Page earlier. I worked with Randy some house shows. Most of the time I worked with Randy, he was substituting for someone who didn't show up.
Okay.
And usually, especially in WWE, baby faces go over every night. And if there's a replacement, the baby face for sure goes over.
Right.
Randy comes over and says, I said, what's going to do tonight? He goes, I'm taking the power bomb. Because they were building me for Hogan for WrestleMania at that point.
Okay.
So Randy's a businessman.
Yeah.
He's got little weird things. We're all weird in our own ways. I'm called weird because I don't party, go to bed early, I get up early, I work out twice a day on the road. It's unheard of. So we all have our little
gotcha intricacies.
Intricacies or little weird points.
When you came in, they were calling you the Millennium Man. And at the same time, in the WWE, Chris Jericho was calling himself the Millennium Man, and he even did an interview where he wasn't pointing a finger at you, but just WCW by saying they're ripping me off. Were you aware of that whole deal?
I didn't even know what J2K or whatever that was about.
Y2J. Yeah.
I didn't know that. After they started the Millennium thing, I picked up on it. They didn't tell me, so I picked up on it. But I know they were just trying to get back at Jericho for leaving.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it.
Yeah.
But I really wasn't aware of it until after I had done it a few times. I didn't even put it to because he didn't come out with Y2J till way after I started talking about Millennium. Because it was a build up for him.
Right.
So I was already doing it while he was still there.
That's right. He
was just finishing his daytime.
Gotcha. Now, when you were there after a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so, what was your impression of the politics, the office politics in WCW?
I thought they were upgraded a little bit from the time before. They got a little silly with that computer thing about putting your fingerprint in.
What did they have you do with the fingerprint?
Well, it was you put your ring finger on and it sent a message directly to the office at what time you checked in. I thought, here it is, we're trying to save money, and they're doing things like this, But I didn't mind because I'm usually the first one there anyway. I'm gonna put my finger down and put my bags down. If I want to go somewhere, I'm gonna go somewhere.
Right. And Hogan, Hogan was a big player there, all the way up until the very end. Had Hogan changed at all, personally, professionally, since the years earlier where you worked with him?
You know what? I can't really say. No, he hadn't changed because he was always really good to me. And our matches were always real easy. It wasn't wasn't pulling teeth. He wouldn't, so no, he didn't change towards me.
Yeah. Have you ever watched Hogan Knows Best?
I've seen a little bit of it.
What do you think?
My opinion, I think, is bad for him.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, and I'll give you a good example. One of the things that exposes him is as an old man. He walks around old, looks old, talks old, talks all about his bad points. Then, they were in Memphis just a month ago.
Yep.
And here it is. They were on every radio station, every live television station, everything. He was talking about how now he's got a new viewing audience from VH1, Hogan Knows Best, and they barely did 2,000 people in a 25,000 seat arena.
Yeah, it's been the talk of business for a couple of weeks. Yeah.
It was really horrible, but they picked. I think what they should have done is stuck what they were supposed to have done. And that was work the angle, which is not really an angle, but it was supposed to have been the last wrestling show at the Mid-South Coliseum. And they would have pulled in some of the people at the place they went to. It cost $10 to park.
Wow.
And then it was so much to get in, and it wasn't well done. They did no promotional stuff till the day or a few days before the show.
Did they contact you at all to do anything on the show?
They asked me about it. I told them I wasn't interested unless I was main event.
Yeah.
And then at the Coliseum, and then then they moved it to the Forum, FedEx Forum, and of course Vince said anybody who works for that show will never work for me, and that's where I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
So I wasn't interested.
Now you had a series of matches with your buddy Kevin Nash when you came into WCW. What do you remember back about the series of matches you had with them?
Kevin is he's a real relaxed person, no pressures. He was really trying to make me build me up, to work with Goldberg. So he was really going out of his way to, do well with me. They were, not classic matches. You know what I mean? They weren't, and I don't really remember working with him only in a scene. I can't remember where it was, but it was like it was a really hard crowd. We never really worked, and if we were scheduled to work somehow or another, he changed around where we were tagging together. And so that was the one thing about WCW there, and WWE too, but WCW is more fragrant, more often that they would just, Kevin was in charge. If he wanted to, put me and him together as a tag team partner against the Harlem Heat, like in Phoenix one night, that's what he did.
Yeah.
Just
as a student of the game and being in the business for as long as you have, do you think that's one of the main things that changed the tide of the wrestling, more people tuning into Raw? Because WCW would advertise these main events, and then they would either get 60 seconds or they would never get the match they were advertising and expecting to see.
When you asked that question, I was going back to another one you'd asked earlier again. Ask it again.
About WCW, and you were talking about how Kevin, you guys would be booked to wrestle each other, but then you'd wind up tagging. And, a lot of people point to that as a big reason that business went down in WCW, especially in ratings, because they would advertise these big matches.
Okay, the ratings too. Let's get the... I think that had a little bit to do with it. I think also it had to do with just the timing. They had just come off that big run where they were, killing Vince and the ratings and stuff. I was working for Vince when that was going on, but we were out drawing them in the house shows. And that's why I went to Vince. And I'll give you an example. One time, here it was, I was just coming in, and they wanted me to get DQ'd or something by Ron Simmons when he was the... Farouk. And I said, I was really upset. I said, because you guys promised me this big run as a babyface, and you put me in a tournament I can't even win. I said, this didn't make sense. He goes, but see, we're trying to do this for ratings. I told Vince right there, I said, Vince, I don't believe ratings mean that much, because we're beating them in the house shows, and that's what our job is to do, is draw money. And I think what you're doing to me here is taking away from me what I can draw. So now, that was what, to get to the ratings, talk about that for just a second, but get to the question would be, no, I don't really think it was that. I think it didn't help for sure, but I think they were already on a downhill skid, because I know that going in, because that's why they were, I remember the ratings when I got there, and I was putting something always to, try to help the ratings, and we kept it right there, a miserable 2.9, 2.7 to once in a while 3 or whatever.
Yeah. And in WCW, it had the reputation, and guys, that we've done interviews with have talked about it. There were some guys there, and, all kinds of names have been thrown around, that just mailed it in. And a lot of the guys that took pride in what they do would get very frustrated working with certain guys. Did you find that there were some guys that would just mail it in?
There's a lot of guys in the business, both territories, that would do that. I hated that, and I hated being put in a position like that. Someone say, okay, let's do a Code Fresno, or, we'd done a show, say one time when we were trying to make a 3-hour drive to Sacramento to catch a red eye to get home that night. So instead of, but I'll tell you this too now, and I know this was in WWF, when I worked with Vader and I worked with these other guys, we had some really long matches because we had it really down and things were going really good. And they would come to me sometimes and ask me to shorten it up. And I wouldn't, because I felt like if it was right and it was good and I had the people, I was the last match, I didn't give a damn what time those agents got out of there.
Yeah.
But that is true. That a lot of people do want to just call it in and go through the drive-through and get out. And but the thing is about that is that that's really bad for the business, especially when you're trying to build a business or get a territory going back or get it back up. Well, the one way to do that is work harder than you ever worked before.
Did you, maybe with a younger guy in WCW, did you ever find yourself in a situation where you had to say, no, we are going to do it this way because? Yeah,
and I did it with older guys too.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. Me and Savage were working against Dean Malenko and Chris Benoit, or one of those, couple guys like that right there. Now I've been told by the office, by Eric, not to come off my feet for anybody, to be real aggressive and do my deal, get over, because if I don't get over to work with Goldberg, it's not going to matter.
Right.
It's just not. So we were in some Louisiana place, and Dean Malenko said, "Hey, Sid, I do a really good drop toho." And Savage was standing there. I said, "No, Dean, this is how it's going to work. You're going to come in. I'm going to boot you to the face. I'm going to beat the shit out of you. You tag out, and I'm going to beat your other buddy up a little bit. And I'm going to powerbomb both of you. I'm going to get 2 victories." I've done that not just with those guys. I did with a lot of guys because it's business.
Sure.
And if I didn't do, and I've done it before, where I, sort of went along with the program, and then once I got out of there, I was pulled to the side. Said, "Look, this is what they see you on TV. If you don't show that to these people in the house shows, it was just the same as a no-show. And that's the way it really is. If they see this, personality on TV, and all of a sudden they see this guy on his knees begging for, forgiveness from a guy who's 4 foot, that's a no-show."
Yeah. Did you find that a lot, a difference? Because you seem like the kind of guy that you look to the future when you're looking at what you're going to do with this guy next and next. Did you find with younger guys, they were more concerned about getting their spots in a match, where you're concerned about, hey, I'm looking towards the future?
Well, that's something too, is really, the business has changed in this, they call them comedy spots, pops.
Right.
The thing about, for me, and I learned this through over the years, I've been really fortunate to have come across and worked directly with some of the best minds in this business, and not just bookers, but guys who also were workers. And I think it's a lot harder, and this is what I used to do to people, to stand for a solid minute and never move and make that other person do the same thing. Now that, to me, is harder and more uncomfortable than trying to get that cheap pop.
Right.
But if you do that, you're able to do that, and my style is a little different than a lot of people anyway. I could, like, Sean, Sting, guys like that, especially when I was straight uphill, I could give them one thing, and I said, "Okay, now just crawl away from me." And when they would crawl, all I had to do is stalk and then stop, look at the people, and it was there.
Yeah.
It's the same as grabbing a hold. You have to find different ways to get the same objective. But, you can find different ways to do it. And I was, years ago, guy told me, he said, "Man, you remind me a lot of Johnny Valiant." And I said, "What?" He said, "I want you to do something tonight." And what they wanted me to do was just after I guess it was wasn't a finish, or maybe it wasn't finishing the match, but you're the heel, walk out. As you get down that aisle, stop, then turn around and just stand there as long as you can stand there. Take one step back towards the ring, and then fucking go back to the ring, to the dressing room.
Yeah.
And when you're able to do things like that and control people's emotions by taking one step, that to me is much greater than doing 50 high spots.
Wow. We did an interview with Bruno Sammartino a couple weeks ago, and I do a radio show, and I have Bruno on a lot. And
I love it.
Me too. He's a good friend of mine, and we've talked about how he says that on the indies and just in modern wrestling nowadays, that they can never do what they did in his day and what you did in your day by coming back with the rematch and building up, because the indies, they throw everything out there in one shot, that you can never go back to the same town every month or whatever. Do you kind of agree with what he says in that respect?
I do. I think too, and not just the indies. I think all organizations now are so set up on a quick fix. Where, for instance, when I worked for Vince the very first time, we sort of knew what I was going to do for 1 year. Now they don't really know. I just told you a story about me and Vader and Sean.
Right.
That happened. That changed. Of course, sometimes changes like that are good because I'm going to draw more money than Vader.
Sure.
And so that worked out good. But for the most part, they do that, but it's forced now because they have a pay-per-view once a month. Instead of, really trying to, I think, because again, I think their minds are so caught up in that damn rating thing that they don't think they can keep a rating by keeping the same issue going. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah. And you mentioned his name, Sting, and you wrestled him quite a bit the first time you were in WCW. Now you're wrestling him a lot then. How did things change, the matches change with you guys?
They never got, if there was any change, it just got better. Sting is so unselfish. He's another person like Sean, so giving. In my opinion, the greatest, purest babyface ever in this business. He knew how to fire up. He had a great personality. He knew how to, let the heel get his heat. He was very comfortable with it, and then he just, just wanted, I've said this before too. I'm not upset with him, but I'm upset for him that he never got the chance. He still has a chance to really get up to WWE and really get what he should receive in this business, and that's be in front of 70,000 people and be a part of that.
Yeah.
But that's why I don't know if you could do it now, have been watered down so much in TNA.
Yeah. Now, we touched on it briefly, but I want to ask you here. The WWE, they just put a Horseman DVD out.
Right.
And Arn Anderson, on his comments on you, he said you did great interviews. He said you were very powerful, but you weren't a team player. How do you respond to that?
This is what happened there, and this is why they're all saying I'm not team players. No, they asked me to do that video or that DVD.
Okay.
The Horseman deal. Well, as a matter of fact, I've been trying to negotiate a new deal with these folks.
Okay.
And I told them straight up that I've got plans, and if I do get to come back, I don't want to water myself down with something I really had nothing to do with the Horseman.
Right.
And if I do come back, I don't want them to see that first. I want them to see me and maybe a new character.
Right.
I might be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you've been out of the spotlight.
Right. I could do a different character.
Exactly.
And I've got a really good idea for one. So that's one reason I think him and Flair had a couple bad things to say about me about not being a team player, because I wasn't interested in doing the Horseman thing. And that's something that you got to realize that means a lot to them, because they really was the foundation of that.
Yeah.
I was honored to be a part of it, but I never felt like that was my career.
Yeah. And Ric Flair was very harsh on you, and he called you an embarrassment and said, he's an embarrassment. I want to make sure that you keep this on the DVD.
You know what? I have to say, Rick, face to face, has always been good to me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Saying that, first when I hear that, it sounds like a little disappointment from him, because they're saying, now they could have twisted it to him, Arn, this different way. But Sid just now, we begged him and we told him we'd pay him. He just didn't want to have nothing to do with this thing and blah, blah, blah. It sounds like a little bit of someone, their feelings were hurt there.
Sure.
Now, being a disappointment or embarrassment to his business.
That's his quote, an embarrassment.
Okay, let's just say this. Who really is the bigger embarrassment in this business? And that's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Is it someone who, like me, who's only had really only one, thing over my head that was really not my fault, or him who's had a cast of stupid things he's done his whole life. But on top of it, on the other side of it, he's a great entertainer, for what he is. But for him to, have been that jealous, it could have been a lot of things. I don't mind saying this. In this business, since I've been in it, I've outdone Ric Flair 100-1 in drawing money. And that's what the name of the game is. Mm-hmm. I've been main event where he had been really main event for a long time. I was main event 90% of my career. Mm-hmm. So even more than that. And when I wasn't main event, they put me in the main event anyway, because Ric Flair and those people couldn't follow me. So if there were anything, it sounded like to me someone's feelings were hurt. Mm-hmm. Team player, Arn has to know I'm a team player because he worked as an agent. When I was in, worked for WCW, they'd come to me. I did a job every night.
Right.
I never had a problem with that. So it sounds like just a little problem with everyone that I didn't do the Horseman thing.
Gotcha. Now, back to WCW, were you surprised that, some people think they gave away a lot of money by putting so many of those matches you had with Hogan on free TV rather than saving it for pay-per-view?
In WCW?
Yes.
You know what? This is I don't really believe that, because we never had a singles match, or if we did, it was always...
You did on Nitro a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about that is, I don't believe that, first of all, I wasn't in an angle with him when I was doing those matches. I was shooting for the big deal with Goldberg.
Right.
But now when me and Hogan shot our first angle, it was down in Miami, when I turned on him and we were scheduled to come back to pay-per-view at Daytona. Was the first time they ever had like a $300,000 advance.
Wow.
Now, they pulled me out of that, put Jeff Jarrett in there. Now, that goes to show that it didn't hurt. We would have sold that place out.
Right.
And really very little issue.
Yeah.
And that's something, too. There's several people in this business that I'm almost automatically going to draw money with, and he's one of them, or used to be.
Yeah, you guys had some real good chemistry together.
Yeah, and it's because we both were able to give. He was always doing for me. His style is real easy. It's like doing a Three Stooges gig. That's what he calls it. When he does his face,
Yeah.
that's his comeback, and it's real simple, and the people buy it.
Yeah. Where did I leave off here? In our last shoot interview, you've talked about Goldberg a couple of times. In our last shoot interview that we did with you, Goldberg was just starting to break, and we talked a little bit about Goldberg, and you said you wished you could work a little with him behind the scenes. Did you ever get the opportunity behind the scenes to give him some advice on his character and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I did. Talked to him a few times about some things. This is not saying I'm right about this. I'll give you an example. We were working together. He was hurt. There wasn't a lot he could do, and he had a couple moves that he felt comfortable doing. So I set up a few spots to where we came into him differently, like duck a clothesline or this or that, or turn around that he wasn't. He gave me whatever this bump he was doing. He says, "We already did that." Wow, this guy's a little lost.
Yeah.
Because what do you mean we can't lock up more than one time, can't do more than one, headlock.
Yeah.
To me, that's so juvenile. I'm not juvenile, but that's the wrong word. But he just wasn't experienced.
Yeah.
He was the first to admit that, though, too. Okay, he was the first to say, "Hey, I don't know what I'm really doing out here," because he had experience like I had or Hogan had and things like that. And two, Bill was really being taken advantage of from a lot of people, that were able to take advantage of him. So he had that little worry. Maybe that was happening to him.
Yeah.
I do remember one story that's sort of funny, but this goes along with beginners. Okay, we were coming out of Detroit one time, and this when the finger thing was first implemented.
Okay.
And so I was asking him. We were talking about that, and he says to me, "Sid, if I could just go 1 year or 5 years more without anybody kicking out of the
His jackhammer thing.
jackhammer,
Yeah.
the jackknife deal,
Yeah.
hammer jack, whatever you call it." He said, "I'll be okay." I thought to myself, "Bill, you want someone to kick out of that?
Mhm.
That's because that'll make money."
Yeah.
So, but he didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, are you the kind of a guy, because you've been around the business for so long, you're the kind of guy that likes to call your stuff in the ring, or are you the kind of guy that likes to lay everything out beforehand?
Well, and that's it all depends who you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
I always try to, get an idea, if I don't know the person, how long they've been working, things like that. But usually in house shows, you're working with people that are, known before and have worked with before. And then everybody's got their own way too. Some people like Vader, he wanted everything laid out before we went out there. And every once in a while, I'd call a spot, just something different. And man, we got to the dressing room, he went, not ballistic on me, but like, "Sid, I'm making you look great. Don't ever do that to me again." I go, "Okay." Now, working with people like Bobby Eaton, Bam Bam Bigelow, who I consider the greatest ring general I ever worked with.
Wow.
And I don't think people really know that about him. He was so smooth and so quick here to pick up on something. Well, this isn't working. It worked last night in front of that crowd, but it's not working here. So let's change this. He was so good at that. We never had a bad match.
Wow.
And a workhorse, too.
Wow. Now, people in various interviews have said that in WCW, they never knew who was in charge. Is that an accurate statement?
That's really accurate. Even when you did know who was in charge, they weren't in charge. And there's a good, and we all know this story. When they were all boycotting and trying to sign petitions to get rid of Kevin Sullivan to bring back Vince Russo.
Right.
And I was a part of that and didn't even know it myself. And what happened was had dropped the belt to Scott Benoit. And of course, his leg or my leg was under the rope.
Right.
I was told to do that. I didn't know why. But they, the next night, they put the belt back on me through Kevin Nash.
Mm-hmm.
I just, they asked me about would I put my name on that petition, things like that. I'm just not interested in that.
Yeah.
I think the office should know who they want in that position. I don't think Vince Russo was doing that great of a job.
Yeah.
I think everybody else was doing just as well. I think Kevin was doing a better job than anybody else at one time. So I just don't, and I don't I don't like that part of. I don't want to worry about who. We know Bush was the boss and Ted
Yeah.
Turner owned the company. Those were the only two things I really needed to worry about.
You're the kind of guy that you just want to show up, do your job,
honestly,
and go home.
I show up. I don't even know who I'm working with.
Yeah.
I showed up here to this thing. I didn't remember the guy's first name. I just, I don't like those hassles. It's not a hassle. It's just, I don't worry with stuff like that. I get there, who am I working with? Okay, what's the finish? Okay, let's do it. Let's have a great time. Let's entertain the people. I always want to have the best match of the night.
Yeah. Scott Hall, it's been said that he could be difficult to work with because you don't know what kind of Scott Hall you're going to get on a given night, and you worked with him in WCW. Did you find that?
No. Scott is also, he's sort of our Dennis Rodman of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to show up sometimes with a couple beers in his gut, maybe something else, but it never affected his performance. Not with me. He always worked his ass off. It was always he took that power bomb as well as a 90-pound person did.
Mm-hmm.
He was really a great working big man.
Yeah.
And people don't realize how big he was, I think.
Wow. Did you question, we were just talking about it, did you question when they put the belt on Benoit in that match where you put your leg on, yet it had been rumored everywhere that he wanted to leave? Did you find that kind of odd? That
I did. I didn't even know it until the day before, the day of the match, and Terry Taylor was an agent at the time, told me that in the gym, and I was really upset for the first, not upset, but I was, confused and a little pissed off, thinking now, two things. One, we know this rumor about them signing a petition,
mm-hmm.
trying to, start whatever. That just doesn't go in this business. The other two is, Chris is a hard worker,
mm-hmm.
but he's never going to be a big money draw. And so for him to take the belt off me and I have, say, put it on someone better, I thought that was a mistake.
Yeah. And you're staying and he's leaving.
Right.
So.
And I'm there. I'm doing everything the company's asked for. I'm not trying to start my own union or my own petition of people that, I only want this guy to work here because he only does good things for us. And
right.
That's the whole thing was. It was him, Benoit, Malenko, Perry Saturn, Shane Douglas.
I think Conan might have been involved.
Conan, he was.
Yeah.
All these smaller guys that never going to reach the potential of the big guy,
mm-hmm.
they wanted that spot. And through Russo, they were going to get it. Because, and that was his link to try to keep his job.
Yeah.
He had that, that little following.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't work out.
Wow. Now, you and Arn were cool at that point, so there were no issues with him being the referee or anything like that?
Never.
Yeah. Do you, what was I going to ask here? Your thoughts on Kevin Sullivan as a booker at the time. You thought he did a pretty good job?
I think he did an okay job. I'll just give you an example of things I didn't agree with. One of them was this. Me and Rick Steiner were working against someone like Perry Saturn and
Malenko.
It was
like
one of those two
yeah.
guys. It was a tag team thing. And, I don't know if you know this now. Rick was pretty much considered like the locker room champion.
Yeah.
His career, and I told Rick this several times, his career was held back because of his people being scared of him.
Mm.
Even the bookers and owners of territories. So it's like when we came in, Kevin goes, "Hey, you gotta just kill him." That's not the business way of doing things. Not those things I disagreed with Kevin about.
Yeah.
Kevin had a pretty good mind, but there were better people for the job.
Gotcha. Now, you wrestled a little bit with Terry Funk in WCW. What do you remember about working with the Funker?
Well, he's a fun guy to work with, but it was a little frustrating. I'm taking one shot to the head with a chair, and I'm out cold, and I look up, and this guy's taking 52 shots. He's still standing. I'm the world champion.
Yeah.
Other than that, and that's being, picky, and I'm not a picky person. That doesn't bother me. That's his gimmick, and I love that. And it was an honor. To work with him.
Thoughts on Tank Abbott? He seemed kind of like a square in a round hole kind of deal.
You know what? Tank was, believe it or not, was a really nice guy. He could have made life hard for people.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's a pretty tough guy. I don't know exactly how tough, but when they put him in with me that time, it was just a little nerve wracking knowing this guy could go off on you.
Right.
Not scared of him, but you don't. If you've got your hands down, he hits you.
Yeah.
Anybody can be knocked out. And I was checking in that night, and the bar was way down from the check-in from the lobby, and he was hollering down at me, "Hey, motherfucker!" blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, "Oh God, just get this deal over with." But we pulled a good rating. He did a really good job.
Yeah.
And he did what was asked of him. I think he was pretty good.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you think that any of the guys, well, you just answered it, were afraid he would go off? Because, I mean, not even so much afraid, but you guys are wrestling business guys, and here's this loose cannon that go off at any minute.
Right. Well, you know what? I don't ever remember anybody having that issue or that conversation ever being brought up.
Oh, okay.
I really don't.
Okay. And was he easy to take criticism if you said, hey, let's do it like this, or I think you should try that?
Yeah. He was real good about that.
That's good. I'm curious for your thoughts on this. Dan Severn, when he was in WWE, he did an interview with us, and he said that he thought on his way out, Royal Rumble was one of his last shows, and he said he thought to himself, what would they do if I just started shooting in there and just started throwing everybody over the top and taking over? What do you think about something like that?
I think it's silly.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't think, I don't know Dan that well. I just met him once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to pick me up and throw me out of the ring. I've wrestled with a lot better wrestlers than him.
Yeah.
I'm talking, Olympic wrestling.
Sure.
So I could hold my own a little bit. That wouldn't have been a good idea, especially if you had, some people in there that knew what they were doing as well.
Yeah.
And they would have picked up on it. The remaining people in that ring would have really gave it to him. But I think when you're a person like that, and your whole life is really circled around real,
mm-hmm.
I think that has to come across your mind. Like you said, he said he would want to do it on his way out.
Yeah.
But what happens in that, when we silly enough or stupid enough to broadcast that, you're never going to be in a position to do that.
Yeah.
They're going to set you up with somewhere like they did Bart Gunn. Bart really wasn't scheduled to win that Brawl for Raw, whatever Brawl for
mm-hmm.
Brawl for Brawl.
Brawl for All.
Yeah.
We just did an interview with Bart a month ago, and we talked a lot about it. And he said that the winner was supposed to get a match with Steve Austin and so on and so forth. And he said he went to the bookers and said, hey, let me just, work this thing. And they were like, no, go out there. And then when he won, it kind of shocked them. And he said he was willing to do whatever they wanted.
Well, that's funny you said that, because I heard just the opposite. I heard they sort of asked him not to beat Steve Williams. That Steve Williams, well, we all know, was the guy that they were scheduling or working up to go against Steve Austin. Yeah. And
that he said he would put Steve Williams over,
right.
and let Steve Williams do his deal with Steve Austin. That's
if Bart says that, that's got to be the truth. Bart is one of the most honest guys you're going to hear.
Yeah. Or
talk to. Now I heard it was just the opposite. That he didn't want. He said, "Hey, look, I'm going for the money. Whoever wins this thing gets $50,000 or whatever." That's what he was going for. Because he told me, or Billy told me about it. Said, Jim Ross came to him supposedly. But if Bart says that he offered to do it, that's probably what happened.
He said, well, you'll get a kick out of this since you brought this up. He said that he showed up at television and all the guys were coming up to him and said, hey, I heard you said you're going to go out there and knock Steve Williams out. I heard you're going to knock Steve Williams out. And he said he never said it, and Bruce Pritchard was just stirring up the pot.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
That's probably true.
Because he said he was really surprised when all these people were coming up there and saying that to him. And he went to Bruce Pritchard and said, I never said that.
Well, and I don't know if this is true. This is what I've heard. This is what great guy Bart is. When he had to fight Bob Holly, who's a good friend of them, they came to agreement that,
he did.
He said, hey, well, I'm not going to wrestle you. We'll just box. That's what Bob wanted to do. And he could have knocked Bob out.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about that as well. Were you were there when were you there when they were doing the Brawl for All?
No.
Oh, you weren't there? What did you think just when you heard about it that they were going to have all these, shoot matches out there?
Well, there was two things I thought about. One would be this. Are they going to believe it? Because we, at this point in time, wrestling, our fans, we tell them it's a work, but they don't want to hear it.
Right.
They want to think it's real. But on the other side, if we tell them it's real, then they're going to tell us it's fake.
Right.
So I just didn't think that was something they needed to do to, one, jeopardize a lot of people who got really hurt on those things. Like Papa Sean got hurt.
Steve Williams
was finished.
Yeah.
So And Steve Williams, in my opinion, at one time, I thought he could be a big money drawer, especially as a heel. So I think that was silly. I don't think it was good for the business. They didn't achieve what they were going for. And then Bart got knocked out by Butterbean.
Yeah.
So that hurt the business. Now they brought, someone real and beat up their toughest guy in their territory.
Yeah.
So that couldn't have been good.
Yeah. Thoughts on the series of matches you had with Jeff Jarrett, who I'm sure you were very familiar with from your days in Memphis.
Right. Jeff is a good worker. This is funny about some people you work with, and of course you watch them on TV, and they look really fluid, and everything looks in place, and everything looks easy. Jeff wasn't that easy to work with. I mean, he was easy to whatever you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
He was good about that, but I just didn't like his spots he came up with. I usually worked with him. He was the heel, so as he's the heel, I let him call the match.
Okay.
For the most part, and so this like picking him up for a slam, it was like Velcros to me. It just wasn't that smooth.
Wow.
But he was a hard worker.
Yeah. Thoughts on matches? Like Sting, a guy you've wrestled a lot in your career, Lex Luger.
Lex, of course, I said again, Sting was probably one of the greatest people I've worked with. Lex was okay to work with, but he was so robotic. In our earlier days when we first worked together, it was a lot more fun. He was over, I was a heel, and that made it fun. But that last run in WCW, I worked there with him just a handful of times. He was one of those that just wanted to call it in and get out. Him and to get back to whatever they want to do.
Yeah, because I remember watching the matches, and I remember seeing the matches in '89, and you guys had a lot of fire and everything together, and it was a lot different this time around.
Everybody was.
Thoughts on, you did some tag matches with Vampiro.
Mm-hmm. I felt this guy was smooth.
Mm-hmm.
I really did. I liked his character. I liked the idea. I thought he did everything they asked. I think, only thing that might have happened is whoever it was Russo, whoever, they put him in a big spot, trying to put him over Flair, put him over Sting, which I think that should have and could have happened because they could have come back. Sting could have come back and beat him down the road.
Sure.
I just think things like that make, especially good, especially when you got someone Sting's been there for 100 years. Vampiro got a really good look, he works hard and was good, credible. I don't think he got the break he should have got.
Do you find that a lot, that there are a lot of guys, again, this goes back to looking long term as compared to looking short term, that there are some guys that just don't want to do a job for whatever reason, but they're not looking ahead to long term and saying, hey, we can make a lot of money on the rematches?
Yeah, I'll give you a good example of this. I remember one time, it was yesterday, Ole Anderson was the booker. Me and Mick Foley were working the territory at WCW. Ole was a tough, hard-nosed guy, and when he wasn't being hard-nosed or cussing me, I didn't think he liked me. Mm-hmm. But he was cussing me, I knew he liked me. For whatever reason, Mick thought he had a hard-on for him or had something against him, and I remember the night Mick walked out, I remember walking outside with him saying, Mick, don't do this. This isn't worth it, man. You got a job here, and blah, 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 blah. But for him, I think that's childish too, that we're that much about what happens in a wrestling ring when you're getting paid such good money. And maybe at that time he hadn't realized it, but whatever happened today is forgotten.
Yeah. For
the most part. And I know that better than anyone.
Yeah.
I've done more jobs. Like I said, I volunteered to do more jobs. And then I walked out the very next night, I was still over like a son of a gun. So I just think that that's overrated. People, but that's you get 10 people together. We got hundreds, we got thousands of people in this industry. So if you just got 10 people, one or two of those people aren't going to go along with the program.
Yeah, yeah. How strange was it when Bischoff came back and now you had Bischoff and Russo working together?
I didn't really find it too strange. I didn't, because again, I don't waste my time worried about things like that.
Yeah.
I was glad Eric was back, because I thought and still think Eric is one of the better minds in this business for making things really spectacular. Maybe not a person spectacular, but he was good at that too. But he really made events happen. He did at WCW some really cool stuff.
Yeah, yeah. You finally had the series of matches with Goldberg, and again, this goes back to '97 when we did our first shoot. What are your thoughts looking back on the series of matches that you had with them?
They were good. I just wish I would have thought of maybe a little more about the match that night before I went into a couple of them, especially the pay-per-views. But he was easy to work with because he was so over, and that always makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah.
Other than it's just his inexperience was the only downside.
Did he was he untrustworthy? If you wanted to do something, was he, because like you said before, he had so many people that did him wrong?
No, not with me. He wasn't. He really wasn't. We both had a really good rapport and a good trust with each other. We knew each other before he ever got into the wrestling business. I was working at WCW. He was playing for the Atlanta Falcons. We saw each other in the gym, and we saw each other out a lot. We were really good friends. The thing about Bill, I don't know if people say this enough, he's got a heart of gold. He's one of the greatest people you've ever met, one of the nicest people he's ever met, and especially being thrown into a spot like that. He really never lost his head very much, as far as like always was real respectable to the wrestling fans and the other, all the boys and stuff like that. There was a few people he didn't like. Scott Hall was one of them. Kevin Nash was one. He felt like they had it out for him.
Now, working in the WWE and working for Vince and knowing what you do about Goldberg, why do you think that things didn't really work out for him over there as an outsider looking in?
One, I think, that big change when Vince bought out the companies and the people knew what was going on. Bill was already on a downhill skid in WCW. He wasn't the big money drawer that they really hoped him to be, because if he was, he would have been drawing money.
Yeah.
That's just being honest. Brought into WWE, I said this too. I said he wouldn't last very long. Especially with his personality. He's got a good personality, but he takes things to heart really too much. And I think that probably was I'm not for sure because I wasn't there, but I think that was more probably the downfall, wherever you want to say, that caused things not to work out more than anything. I didn't watch enough of it to see if they were using him to his ability. Vince is always pretty smart about what people's strongholds are, what their negatives are, not staying away from the negative. And it's real easy for Bill to done that. I don't know too if maybe Bill might have came in and said something to Vince like, "Hey, this is what I need to do to get over." And Vince going to go, "Okay, we're going to show you now what you don't tell us." Unfortunately, Vince educated me like, "Okay, Sid, why do you like this person? He talks so bad about you." I'm just making up a story. Well, Sid, the reason why is because I got so much money invested in this guy. I'm going to use him just like I use you. He's real honest about that. I'm going to get you over, and I'm going to bleed you for everything I can bleed you for. That's the business. But then, I also seen some vindictive things, what I call vindictive booking.
Yeah.
Where it just, booking and doing things to a guy out there that just does it is not helping the company. And it could have got to that point. I don't know that part.
Well, you said in the last shoot interview you thought it was a little vindictive when you came back and they started calling you Sycho Sid.
Well, I think that was a little vindictive. I think too that they just used that for, they were really down. I'm telling you, man, that territory was on its butt.
Wow.
People weren't getting paid.
Wow.
I mean, really, the guys, except for myself, I was getting paid. But like Billy and Bart and Bob and all these guys, they had to go on the road, collect their draw money, and that's how they survived. Because, I think WWE, you get paid weekly, and sometimes be a month where you got paid. So that was, that's how bad it was going in there. So I think they were doing it for shock value. They, Vince was honest with me in the beginning. He said, "Hey, this is what we want to do. We're trying to get Kevin Nash over. So we're going to bring you in, have you work against him, and then maybe Sean after that." The thing about it was this, though. From the very first show I showed up, which I think was WrestleMania at Hartford.
Okay.
They chanted my name the whole time. And every time I worked with Kevin, and almost on every venue, I was the baby face or the one, the more popular one or whatever. To me, you're working against the grain there. When you're forcing something down someone's throat, like they did with The Rock the first time, they didn't buy it. But then after he got over a little bit and let the people, absorb him, it helped. I think that would help Kevin too. I don't think he'd ever would have achieved the status The Rock achieved because different personalities and different charisma.
Sure. And is it true in the one match you had with Goldberg where you bled a lot? Is it true that you had a surgeon cut your head?
Yep, they came in early, numbed me, cut me. We did a little deal in the back where Goldberg would hit me. They showed that. It was like a little insert in the pay-per-view. And then went back, sewed it up, and then went back to the ring. And then it didn't open up quite as much as they wanted to at first. And then they got me a couple more times. The referee did. I've never done that myself.
Yeah.
And so then it did open up. And I never saw it, but I know I called it home that night, man. My family were in tears.
Wow.
So it must have really been pretty scary looking.
Wow. And you teamed up a little bit with Hogan in WCW. What's that?
And Bill.
Yeah, and Bill. What were your thoughts on working with them as teammates?
It was a lot of fun.
Was it?
It was.
All right. And you left for a little while with an injury. I think it was a tournament match I had with Sting.
Uh-huh.
It was the last match you had for a while, and then you came back kind of early. Did you feel pressure to?
Well, I was. I had. This is the whole weird story about that. I wasn't even set up, and I was set up to go back to Dr. Andrews on Christmas Day for my referral. They called me like a month prior. Hey, Terry Taylor, man, we know you're not ready. The doctors haven't given you the deal, but we need you. I couldn't get my wallet out of my back pocket.
Wow.
I couldn't put a belt on, but I didn't want them to know that. I couldn't carry my wrestling bag. So I said, well, man, he said, well, if you'll just go to a doctor and tell them you're just going to try this on a trial night-to-night deal. So that's what I did. And then they brought me back several times also just to supposedly just do some stand-in things.
Mm-hmm.
Like one time was in Biloxi, Mississippi, and I thought it was just a stand-in thing, but I found out Hogan was coming in to clothesline me over the top rope. I landed right on my shoulder. I just had surgery on. That set me back too. And I thought, I was working so hard through therapy and working out in the gym so hard to try to maintain my look. Dr. Andrews said it was a normal, time frame. It's just all the stress I was keeping on that particular area.
Yeah. Now you had a series of back to the shoulder. How did it consistently nag you because you never really had time to let it heal? Did it consistently nag you along the way? Or?
Well, it did, and that's up to even the night I broke my leg. I couldn't do a suplex or anything like that. I couldn't move my arm. I couldn't raise my arm above my head. Like I said, I couldn't put my wallet in.
Wow.
So, but they knew that. But I was trying to be a team player. That's what I don't understand about people saying that I'm not a team player.
Yeah.
And I've walked in so sick, so hurt, where I couldn't even carry my own bag and still work. So, but that's this.
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah. You had a series of matches with Scott Steiner, who had changed a lot since the first time you were around the territory. What do you remember about those matches?
Chaos.
Yeah.
He was so, man, I don't know what his problem was. He was just so, I don't know. He just couldn't calm down. He was just, cussing everybody, screaming at everybody, the referees, the people in the back, just, I don't know if it was, his first really solo stardom deal. I don't know if you know this or not. He would they'd say go out and do an interview about Sting, and then halfway through it, he's cussing Hogan. It's like, what's going on here? Everybody look at each other, go, and I don't know what was his problem in the WWE, why he didn't last there, but I knew he wasn't going to last there either because you're not going to talk to people like that there for very long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he when you actually got in the ring with him? Did he calm down, or was he still?
He was just erratic, man. Just nervous as I don't know what. I think the pressure was too much for him.
Wow.
Of course, I don't know if you. No, I'm not saying anything anyone doesn't know. I remember in Gainesville. I think it was Gainesville. When they first gave him his first singles match against Ric Flair, he bombed terribly.
Oh, back in the day.
Yeah,
okay,
remember about that?
Absolutely.
Okay, he never shook that. And that's why I still say that Rick was the better of the two. Rick had all the tools, in my opinion, to have been anything he could have wanted to be. He could have been the next Steve Austin because he had credibility, he had physical gifts. He could do those awkward things like the thing off the top, all those things that a lot of people couldn't do, and he had that word credibility. I think he was the better of the two.
Well, let me ask you thoughts on this, and because you've talked about Rick and Scott and everything. And I don't know if you know this, you might, but it's been documented by everybody involved that Rick Steiner was actually supposed to go over on Ric Flair at Starrcade '88 in under 5 minutes for the world title in somewhat of a squash. It was Dusty booking at the time, and Flair went above Dusty to Turner or Crockett and got it changed.
Well, he did that to me too.
Really?
I was supposed to have won the belt that night in Chicago at Halloween Havoc against Sting.
Right.
And that was probably my greatest night of wrestling, and I didn't even know the finish. What we were told is I was going to win, and how it was going to happen was we're going to do a match, go to the finish, throw him outside the ring, throw him through the back door, and as he's come back through, he's going to work his deal that someone hit him in the head, walk into the ring, roll him up, 1, 2, 3, I'm the champ, okay? I've been told this now for 3 months. I did interviews for 3 months. I was going to be the next champ. Ric Flair would come to me and say, Sid, you shouldn't be saying that. That's what Ole says I'm going to be. So I'm going to say what Ole tells me to say. And so I know that he was the one that went to the upper people and said, Sid's not ready for this. So what they did was they had Barry Windham come in, rolled him up, 1, 2, 3. I got the belt. Never was told anything different. I think, okay, I'm the champ. Have my back turned. This huge eruption comes. Turn around, Sting's in the ring. Ref's grabbing the belt out of my hand going, take the Stinger splash, 1, 2, 3. I didn't even know that was part of the thing.
Wow.
But to me, I got chill bumps talking about that. That to me is more fun than have everything laid out. And we fooled everybody. We fooled the boys. And when you fool the boys, and that's what I learned that night, and I do it in some of my matches sometimes, I try to be really physical and really make everybody think I really hate that person while I'm out there, because I know if you fool the boys, you fool the people. That simple.
Wow. So, just to close out on the Rick Steiner deal, if Rick would have went over as planned, do you think he would have wound up becoming that big star that you think he could have been?
I think he could have been. If, for instance, if he had the right people in his ear saying, okay, Rick, to be the champ and to be the top single guy, you got to give. And that's, I got in his ear like that a little bit at the end there. Yeah. And I let him know then that, man, the only reason you haven't gotten to where you should be is because people are scared of you,
Wow. Now, I don't know, because I know you talked about it before that you had a match scheduled with Hogan on the pay-per-view and that was changed to Jarrett. Was that the match that they had their deal where do you think that was just a big let's work the boys thing, or do you think that was legit?
I think it was legit. I know Russo hated Hogan for whatever reason. There was just, it's going to be frustrating for anyone who's coming into a place and trying to do good and make big change when your top player doesn't do anything but what he wants to do. You can't make change in the territory if your top players aren't playing with you. So I know that had to be frustrating for him. And then I don't think Hogan trusted anybody. He had that, what it was called.
Creative control.
Creative control. I don't think that should be given to anyone. I just don't. I don't want that. Even if it was offered to me, I don't want that responsibility to say, okay, well, we didn't succeed because you didn't do what we asked.
Yeah.
That's not. I don't want that blame.
How was why do you think the match was changed from you to Jeff?
I don't know why, because we shot the angle and in Miami, I believe it was, and did TVs the next day, I think, in Tampa. Everything was still going as good, and then they brought me into the room and said, hey, your shoulder's a little hurt. We're going to give you this pay-per-view off. We're going to do this, have Jarrett come in. I don't really know the real reason for it, other than we know that Jeff Jarrett was Russo's, confidant,
right?
Or best buddy, or whatever you want to call him.
His boy.
His boy.
Yeah.
And I think that's another indication, another telltale sign about Vince Russo is really not that great business oriented, because that was a bad decision. You don't make decisions. It's like betting on a football game or a basketball game. I don't bet on my who I like. I bet who I think is going to win.
Right. And at what point, or at any point, did you think to yourself in WCW from a business standpoint that things are just spinning out of control around here?
Well, I sort of felt like that from the very first time I worked for them. There wasn't any structure there. And after working for Vince and seeing structure and seeing how things are done perfect, you know, that was something I tried to do when I went back to him. I worked in the office with Ole just doing things like this, interviews, being sure people got some things done right. And if it wasn't good, I didn't know. Just the formula for this business is so simple. And Vince has got it, used to have it down, really down to an art. And when you saw how simple it was and how successful it could be, you wanted to send that formula everywhere you went. I remember me and the Nasty Boys, we were back in WCW. They had also left, and I had left. We were in somewhere in South Carolina in front of a $20,000 house. I wanted to commit suicide. I thought, man, I just left 70,000 people, man. I'm in front of 2,000. And they were like, man, isn't it great? The house is up $4,000. I looked at Brian Knobs. I said, shut up. Don't even include me in this. I don't want anybody to say I was a part of this. That's how, but again, like I said, it was more fun atmosphere, more of a family type of deal. But that's not what I was looking for.
Yeah. When you heard that WCW was up for sale, were you surprised?
No, that rumor had sort of been buzzing around there for a while. I was a little shocked that it went through. Especially I was really shocked that Vince was the one that bought it. Because I couldn't believe Turner would give in like that. Of course, he had so many people over him making that decision for him. I believe.
Yeah.
It was. I think the whole thing was strange. And I'll tell you what I think. This is my opinion. I think that was an opportunity for the business to start back from square one. We could have done everything. I know this sounds maybe silly, but you could have went back for it. You could have really got someone like me, had really strong credibility, and beat somebody with a slam. Don't touch the referees for a while. Don't get out of the ring for a while. That's what I want to do when I go back. I want to never ever wrestle outside of the ring. Be the first person to do that. And have it. And then they'll know things like that.
Yeah.
I think they screwed up that opportunity. They didn't do some of the things right. You
mean when they integrated WCW?
Yeah. I think when they all started that, it was a good time for them to start back a little bit, take a few steps back, go back to some of the simple philosophies of the business, and then do some of the, because they're still doing the same things they did 100 years ago, right? Just a little different twist, and sometimes the twists aren't different. So this would have been a good idea to start back then. Say, I'm just using a slam for a finish. I'm just using it for an example. Okay, then that would have made a power bomb really spectacular.
Yeah.
Well,
you watch even the old tapes today and you see guys beating people on vertical suplex. It was right. Once they hit that, it's over.
Exactly. So that's the only thing is I think that was a mistake. I think they could have went back. They could have gave the business a rebirth. I believe.
Yeah. Now, because a lot of guys at WCW were making a lot of money at the time. Did any of the boys ever think, well, let's just pool our money together and buy WCW?
I don't think, no. I think it was way too much money for people to do that. And like me, from my experience in this business, you don't put any money back into the business and you lose it.
Gotcha.
Even if you try to run your own show. Hogan's a good example. He tried to run that show, him and they're in Memphis, and they lost their ass.
Yeah.
None of them could have made no money.
I think now looking back on it, I think Randy Savage did actually put a bid in on his own for WCW.
I think you're right.
But nothing really worked out. Because I think it only sold for like $3 million or something
like that. It was cheap,
that.
Yeah. So I think they should have, but the thing is, though, and you do know this, but probably weren't thinking about it takes a lot more money than that week to week, with payroll and production costs, and now Turner's not backing you. You got to come up with your own jumbotron, your own rings. It's been too tough.
Yeah.
And the business was bad then too.
And I guess for somebody like Vince, he already has the rings, the production, everything. You had some matches in WCW with Shane Douglas, who was he in Continental when you were there?
Yes,
I think he was.
Actually, a lot of people remember this. He was, I was a heel, Lord Humongous. He came out, he's the one who turned me babyface. He was my cousin. Right.
Because I used to watch on the Financial News Network. It was on FNN back in the day.
So,
yeah.
Shane was a lot of fun to work with. I didn't really respect him so much as a worker until I worked with him in WCW.
Really?
I never thought he was that great. But he really made me look like $1 million the time I worked with him. And he was smooth and just really giving,
Wow.
And Shane's got a little bit. If you know him,
Yeah.
he's a little cocky or a little different. I don't know what the right word is for him, but one of those people I would say believes too much in his character.
He's very confident in himself.
Yeah, confident in himself too. We all have to be that. But the franchise and excuse me, but he knew Sting was using that. That's something you don't need to do. He's not a franchise. But that's still. But he was a lot of fun to work with.
Yeah. Now, one of the match where you broke your leg, you weren't known for coming off the ropes. How did that all come about?
Well, Johnny had been asking me to do that stupid stuff.
John Laurinaitis, Johnny Ace?
For some time. And they knew I couldn't even put my belt on. So I said, I don't feel comfortable even jumping off a rope right now to give an axe handle. And I just don't want to do it. So the night of the pay-per-view in Indianapolis, he had it written into the script. And why it was so important, because once I did that, then they were going to pan back to the mystery partner, who we know wasn't going to be on my side.
Mm-hmm.
We know the finish was his brother.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they come back, I think at that point they were supposed to have me down and getting their heat on me. He was to showed up and then not save the day, or whatever the case was. I just, I could have, only thing I could say is I could have, and I even at one point that evening said, hey man, I want you to change this. I don't want to do it. And for several years, man, it was a big regret for me. I'm telling you something. You're talking about 6 fucking years of rehab to get where I'm at today. Never a day of it doesn't go back to me. I think about that.
Wow.
A little animosity, not towards Johnny, really to myself. Nothing against Johnny. Johnny's not a genius either. He's got a good mind for the business. But me jumping off, giving Scott Steiners a knee to the head is not going to fucking, use my language, not do anything other than get me hurt. And that wasn't going to make that big of a deal. That's what really bothered me about the whole thing.
When you originally hurt your leg, did you think, just like all the other injuries, you could recover from it in 6 months or something?
Oh yeah, now when I was in the hospital that night, I never saw it. I never looked at it. Never seen the clip. Never want to. Those doctors looked at me, and I could tell by their eyes something was wrong. Even when I went home and started doing my referral work, I didn't really know more about this injury until, really, believe it or not, that horse Barbaro.
Yes.
All right. What happens is when you have a compound fracture that far away, there's no muscle tissue. So it's the hardest way for anything to rehab. And that's why it was so hard, and that's why it's been such a long process. And I was never predicted ever to walk or run again.
Wow.
I'm doing all that now. So that's why I'm a little biting at the bit now, because now I'm ready, and I'm ready to get back, and I want to finish my career not being carted out on a stretcher. And always wanted to finish my career working in the WWE. That's where I could have the most fun and most, not so much the most fun, but the most, I could really be.
You make the biggest impact.
Well, then I could get my self-gratification by drawing money, and that's, I know it sounds cliche, but that's my most important thing for me. If I'm drawing money, I'm making money.
Right.
Making money, not drawing money is not that much fun. I've done it, worked for WCW. You just go through the motions, but when you're drawing money, you're working hard and it's just, you don't feel aches and pains, it's so well worth it.
Yeah. As far as the clip, people compare it to Joe Theismann when Joe Theismann broke his leg, and it's just, it's an infamous clip. People, watch it to this day.
Well, I believe too that just between you and me,
sure,
that just coming back from that's going to be the biggest medical comeback in the history of any sport. Just for me to come back from that alone, not saying changing my identity, that might help too, or anything, but coming back from that is going to make, that'll be a hell of a deal.
Definitely. People love comebacks.
Exactly. And man, this has got a heck of a story, man. You got to realize, 1 month after that surgery, I was in the gym on a walker, okay, doing power cleans on one leg. I got people at the gym that still remind me, how was you doing that? Walking downstairs on a walker, only allowed to put 7 pounds of pressure on this leg. So I did that, and then running into that wall every day, it was tough.
Yeah.
Now I've ran through that wall, so that's been the really upside for me.
I was going to ask you mentally, how at your lowest point, recovering from leg injury, how down did you get?
Man, I'm gonna tell you something. It really put a strain on everything in my life. Because at first I was hitting the wall, but it wasn't affecting me. I said, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. The doctors weren't really giving me a lot of telling me what was going on either. Finally had one doctor finally tell me, hey, he said, you're not gonna really ever walk again. Man, from that point on, it was pretty scary. So I had to work harder. I'd work out in the morning, then I'd go to rehab for 3.5 to 4 hours a day. Every day for years I did this. So depression, I never dealt with depression before. I had to deal with that. I didn't even know I was dealing with depression. I don't have anything to be depressed about. It's one of those things that sneak up on you. You don't even realize it's hitting you until it's too late. Caused me a lot of problems with my family. I'm just now able to make up to my family the way I was acting, and I didn't even know why I was acting like that. Had to go through a anger management course because I was so angry at the whole world. Mm-hmm. Wasn't blaming anybody for anything, but boy, I was just and I use anger as a tool for me too to succeed. Sometimes, like if whatever's going on, I'm gonna work. I'm so damn mad. I'm gonna work out 3 times today. I'm gonna run bleachers twice. So that would push me and making me do better. This time, anger didn't work for me. It just made a hole deeper and deeper.
That's exactly what you said in the last interview, was how anger motivated you to run more bleachers, mm-hmm. and because you were recovering from injury, when we did our last interview and things like that. Right. You were saying the same exact thing.
Well, and it does. And I was running, I got a hill over Memphis. It's 110 yards up, a pretty steep angle. I run up to the top of it, and I spit, and I step on it because I'm stepping on somebody. That's what I think in my mind.
That's what you said the last time.
And that's what makes me get up that hill another time. Man, I can run bleachers for 60 minutes nonstop. It's just, I'm in such shape. It's phenomenal.
Wow.
And people see that too. And people, you realize back home, it takes anywhere from 3 to 4 people to work out with me in a week because they can't recover and they can't, work out with intensity. I mean, I don't believe what's called an empty set. Every set's a failure.
Wow.
It's so intense, and that's why I'm in such great shape. Even with the disability I had to work through. Yeah. And now it's no longer a disability. It's actually been it's been a good thing for me.
Is it harder to stay in such top shape as you get older?
You know what? I would have thought so. I'm in better shape now than I was before I broke my leg.
Wow.
And that's what's so weird. This is the time that I judge myself. I have 2 goals. One's long-term, one's short-term. The long-term goal is to see how many pounds of lean muscle mass I can put on in each year. And this is the time that I lean down. That's why I'm a little lean right now. From 305 to around 280 now. I was down to 270, but I'm coming back up a little bit. I see how many pounds of lean muscle mass I can put on in 1 year. Then my short-term goal is to see how many days consecutively I can make it into the gym without missing. Like through November, December, January, I didn't miss a day. Wow. They even the gym opened up for me on the days off.
Wow.
So people don't know that about me either. I'm at my first workout at 5 o'clock, and then I'm back in there at 1 or whatever, and I'm in there for 3 hours at minimum.
Wow.
Each time.
Now, when you were recovering from your injury and you were at your lowest point, did you cut off contact, like not even talk to any of your friends anymore or guys from the business?
I changed my phone number.
Wow.
I didn't want to ask that story. I didn't want to answer that story. I didn't want to answer any more questions about that anymore. On the other hand, there have been so many good people that, strangers. For instance, when I was going to the gym, I knew, for instance, I could walk. I could get out of my vehicle and I could walk so many steps before I had to sit down. All right. There were people that were personally parked in my vehicle for me, opening the doors for me, things like that. Hey, we're praying for you. Those were good things, or good parts of my life that kept me going.
Yeah.
The wrestling business side has a tendency to ask the same old nagging questions. If you're talking to one of the boys, especially, they're going to, how did that leg, how did it happen, why did it happen, and just explaining it time and time again it seems like even today I'm still answering it. But for 3 or 4 years, man, it was all day, every day.
Yeah.
I got tired.
And it makes a lot of sense what you say about wanting that last run to show people you don't want to go out like that, because there are a lot of people, kids that have never seen you wrestle before, but then they find your clip on YouTube or something like that.
That, and for me, I take a lot of pride in what I've done. I really maybe think too much of myself. Some people, we all think, maybe say things that make it sound like that. I think I had a really great career. I think that would be a horrible way to been remembered going out. I said, and now I have so much more to offer. More mature. Those last few years of WCW, no one could have been more giving than I was. This whole idea about this thing now, this is why this can only be a win-win situation for Vince and myself. I'm coming in knowing what my job is, and that's to get over and draw money, and then after that, put people over. And not many people want to, in their career correctly.
Yeah.
By saying, okay, use me, put me on that slab, cut my head off, I'm finished, I'll do after that what you want me to do.
Well, look at Hogan. He doesn't want to go back because he doesn't want to finish that way.
That's silly. That's silly because, to do that, it doesn't mean you can't come back. To do a job doesn't mean you don't come back.
Yeah.
Unless you say, hey, I don't want to come back.
Right.
I know this is just what I feel like they want to do with Hogan. When I was in there the first time, they were ready for Hogan to finish up and only do special appearances through the year.
This was 15 years ago.
Right. He didn't want to do that then. So some of us had that deal where we don't want to, but at the time too, Vince and them didn't want him to go to WCW, but they want to keep him here to do just, special deals. Hogan was looking at a larger picture. Can't fault the guy for doing it, but he's back now for Vince doing periodically shots, and I don't know this to be true or not. I heard this while he was in Memphis. This is why they wouldn't let Lawler and anybody else do the show, because he wouldn't do WrestleMania. I don't know the truth to that.
That's what they say, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the word on the street.
And I don't know why he didn't want to do WrestleMania.
Money? Something to do with money?
Well, I heard they offered him a lot of money. It wasn't the money I heard. I heard it was the position on the card.
Okay. I think he had some kind of deal where when he came back for shows, he had to be the highest paid guy on the show. And for a while it worked. And, Vince doesn't want that anymore, but he still wants to be the highest paid guy on the show, even at this stage of the game.
The only thing I say about that is this. If you're drawing the money, you should be the highest paid guy on the show.
Yeah.
And when he came back, I think he was still drawing bigger crowds than anybody else. So, I don't know why that would have been an issue, but I guess it was.
Yeah. Was it mentally the first time you stepped back in a wrestling ring after you, recovered and after all those years and the hard work? Was it a tough mental block to get over, stepping back into the wrestling ring and being in a position where your leg's vulnerable again?
Well, that's funny. My first show back actually was a referee gig in Montreal for Jock and Carl Willett.
Okay.
Which I did feel awkward on that one. The next gig was I came to Montreal and did a pay-per-view for a company. It was like ECW in Montreal. I can't remember the name.
IWS, maybe?
IWS, something like that.
Yeah.
I worked a whole hour that night. We were in a tag team type of tournament. It really wasn't a tournament, but we did this whole deal. I did a little bit of this gig that I want to do for Vince and them about this guide character that I've been talking about. And I used a midget. I used a cast of characters. Where I'm getting this theme from is from great conquerors in the world like Genghis Khan.
Okay.
And what they did after they conquered countries, they'd go into the castle and they would parade the queen, the king around and have a party. And when they got tired of that, they would cut their heads off. And I would say that in the interview. I'd go, hey, and guides took me to that. And I was sitting right next to Genghis Khan when this happened. But I worked that whole hour. Now, I'd set up all these things up with Carl. Carl being from Montreal. He just said, I just don't understand all this stuff. We had an hourglass, and everybody had all these props, and I had the midget and the girls and blah, 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 blah. But when we got done with it, we got home that night, and we were exhausted. And Carl looked at me, and Carl, I have a great amount of respect for this guy. He's a great worker. He looked at me and he said, Sid, you're a genius. I mean, I do know what I'm doing. I know what works. I know how to make things work. And they don't always sound just like the deal with Flair. That chair didn't sound like that big of a deal, but it was.
Mm-hmm.
So these little things that were complex for Carl was so much to digest in a couple of days of going over it,
Mm-hmm.
which really just needs years to be done. We did it in one night,
Yeah.
but it was a lot of fun. And that, to get back to your answer on that, but I did that whole hour and never thought about my leg.
Wow.
Not one time. But then the next match after I had like that was a year after that was in Nashville. I did a few matches there. Same thing. I just man. Of course, I'm running at this point, so I didn't have any problems.
Yeah. How did you find out that the sale was done and that Vince bought WCW?
Someone called and told me about it and said, "Watch it tonight. Shane's going to come on and announce it." You know.
Yeah.
I saw it like that.
Yeah. Now, how did it affect you? Because I would imagine you were under contract
I
at
was
the
still on
time.
contract. They were, until my contract was up, WCW paid me just like they paid everyone else.
Mm. Did Vince ever try and buy out early or anything like that? Or?
No, well, I'm crippled
Yeah.
at that point. There's probably no sense in it. I mean, I know I couldn't have helped anybody at that point.
Yeah. Did anybody ask you to come to the last Nitro, or did they know since you were hurt you couldn't?
I couldn't even travel.
Yeah. Wow. And after when Vince started integrating WCW into his storylines and his television, did anybody try and contact you, or did they know how severely injured you were?
Vince never contacted me. This is funny. When Jeff Jarrett first started TNA up, he had no one's name to put up there to show the sponsors that that they had. He called me and asked me, and I gave him a letter of recommendation or whatever you call it, saying I was working for the company, which I was on a walker. That was the only person that asked me to do that. That's what's strange too, is all the things I did to help those guys, because they called and asked me to come in and do some things, but I was honest with them. I don't want to work for those guys unless I could know I'm not going to work for Vince.
Right.
Because I wouldn't do something small.
Right. Right. I don't know how much you watched or anything, but did you watch the way that WCW was integrated into WWE TV at all?
Not much of it.
No. I was wondering, what you thought about. You would think that something like that would be an angle you could run with for. They could still be running with it.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
I think that's where the spot that they could have started up from scratch.
Yeah.
And said, okay, and made this into a big feud. First of all, I wouldn't have made a big deal about the sale. Vince was too, and I saw Vince come out, he was too happy to get out there and talk bad about Ted Turner. It was over after that interview. They knew Vince had won. I wouldn't have done that. I would have, worked it as hey, I would have never said anything. I'd let the people thought what they wanted to think about it. I would try to keep the sale quiet even and let the two companies run, in existence by themselves. Then all of a sudden make the two, like nations collide. They never did do that.
Yeah.
Properly.
If you're Vince and you just bought it, why would you go out trashing something you own now?
It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make that's not to me Vince's philosophy. I think that might have been some vindictive booking.
Yeah. Do you think if Eric Bischoff would have bought WCW like he was talking about doing, you would have been a big part of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eric was always good to me.
Yeah. Did you? I don't know if you were hurt yet. Were you there when it was announced? I think it was announced to the boys anyway that Bischoff bought it, and then obviously it didn't go through.
Yes, I was there then.
Oh, okay.
Bischoff and supposedly the people that do the ESPN Classics were doing a joint venture.
Yeah. And they what did they do? They came in and they said that he's going to buy it and everything.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, they were there the night I broke my leg.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were.
Wow. You talked about signing the letter of intent with Jarrett and everything. And are you surprised that they didn't try and at least get you involved in some way? I know you said you didn't want to.
Well, this is what I offered to them. I told them what I thought my time schedule was as far as I could do anything physical.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but I have a great passion also to be a booker or a creator. I don't know if you know this. I brought in Harlem Heat. I gave them their name.
Okay.
And when I was there in the beginning, I had a really cool gimmick for him with Robert Parker.
Okay, I remember.
I started him.
Okay.
I gave him that gimmick, bought that suit for him.
Did you?
Gave him his name, wrote all his interviews, did everything. But I learned all this previously working for Vince. I learned these tools with Harlem Heat and them. I had a really cool idea for them because they really scarred a little bit. And at the time, Louisiana governor was a really big gambler. And I said, Colonel Parker being the flamboyant person he is, he had won a gambling debt and and the governor of Louisiana owed him so much money he just couldn't pay it. So he said, "Hey, I want to tell you what I do. I want to take 2 people off death row. And I'm going to make them into world champions because I'm the greatest promoter of all time." Colonel Parker being
Elvis is
exactly
Parker, right?
So he first introduced me as my coming in as coming back, but I said, "Hey, for your interview, you say this was too easy. I am the Elvis of wrestling." You know, so you're going to take 2 people who are just, have nothing going for them in their life, so you're going to make them into Elvises.
Yeah.
And so I met Harlem Heat doing a benefit for Kerry Von Erich, and that's when I said, "I'm going to bring these guys in." It took me forever to get those guys to come in. Dusty didn't want them. Nobody wanted them. But when I got them there, it was like the greatest thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
But that's what I sort of wanted to do for TNA. I could do, I wanted to book. I knew they didn't have any great bookers, or any better than me. I could have had a chance there, but and that's why I really disappointed them because they never offered that to me.
Yeah. Have you ever talked to anybody that wanted to start their own company and use you in an office position like that?
Well, almost all these little people that have across the country have had ideas about trying to start up their territory. They usually call me and ask me if I would be interested in doing that, and I say yeah, but then they never start up.
How come? Were you contacted to go over to Australia, the WWA thing, the Andrew McManus thing, and why didn't that work out?
I did go.
Oh, you did go.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that? How come that didn't work out?
You know what? No, all right. It's sort of ironic. I was over in Australia doing a promotional thing for WCW's first thing over there. At the time, Andrew McManus was there doing a show with Kurt Hennig versus Dennis Rodman. Right. And they weren't doing too bad. They were doing pretty good. All right. And then I was introduced to Andrew, or he got in touch with me over the phone. I had to go. I was on a wheelchair going over there, man.
Wow.
So I was there. I flew over there, did the show, and came right back. That's how quick it was.
Wow. Do you think they could have did anything if you got TV or anything?
I think they could have. I thought Andrew McManus, have, and especially have met, all the top people of both territories. I think he could have done pretty good.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think he had the money. It showed he had the money. It just, if he could just, had a good team, say, of minds behind him, because he couldn't have done it by himself.
Yeah. Do you think, because you worked for him in the past, Jerry Jarrett, I know he was in the running too to buy WCW. If he would have bought WCW and had that, do you think he would have been successful, or do you think he still would have had that territorial mentality about him?
I'm going to have to say that I think he had that territorial mentality about him. And while we would say that, you look at their show today, first of all, it's Jeff. Now he's a babyface. That's almost, that's like death for that territory, in my opinion. For you take, for instance, say if I came in there, one of the most credible heels in the business, and then I put him over, you don't have nowhere to go, and he's not going to draw any money by himself. Right. I just don't think that, I just don't think they can get away from that.
Yeah. There was a story that I read somewhere on one of those urban legends things that back when you were in your younger days, they used to bring a squirrel on the road with you. Is that true?
No, it's not.
That's not true. Do you know the story I'm talking about?
No, I don't. Go ahead. I had somebody ask me about the squirrel. I don't really know what the whole deal is about.
There was a story. Somebody said in an interview that you used to travel with a pet squirrel, and the boys bet you to stick it down your pants, and you got bit by a squirrel and had to go get a tetanus shot.
No. I haven't even been squirrel hunting in 20 years.
No.
Actually, I got a dog right now. I'm training to be a squirrel dog.
Okay.
But just for the sport, not for the kill.
Yeah. Are you surprised that a guy that you worked a lot with in your time in the WWE, Undertaker, are you surprised at his age and his size that he's able to still go at a really high level, too?
Yeah, I am. He's a few years younger than me, but realize, too, he goes at a high level, but he also goes at a really slow level, too. He's able to walk around and do nothing. Not say not do nothing, but, pace himself. But, yeah, I mean, for that guy to, and I've seen the bruises on him from dropping that elbow off the top rope, and him do it night after night after night after night. It's just, and his whole leg's a solid bruise. It's just a testimony of how hard, what pain level he would go through to succeed.
Yeah. As a guy that works incredibly hard on your physique and your body, what do you think nowadays of WWE having this whole steroid policy involved, where yet you have all the guys they push on TV that have the big bodies, and yet they have this? It's almost like a double-edged sword, it seems.
I'm really not familiar with it. I'm only hearing this story through some wrestling fans, and I'll just give you an example. I heard Kurt Angle was fingered out for whatever reason. And I just assumed either he had, said the wrong thing or done something, and they targeted him out for that. But yeah, then you know as well as I do, this thing that just came out with
the story in Sports Illustrated about all those guys getting busted.
Yeah, it was
Edge was one of them. Shane Helms
and
Angle, I think, was
Kurt Angle
involved
was in it, and that other guy.
There was somebody else in it.
Orton.
Right.
And now this is what they're retract. This is WWE's statement afterwards. Said, as long as these guys are in doctor's supervision, we have no problem with it. So that tells you, and then from my opinion, and this doesn't mean it's right. This isn't the NFL, and if it was even the NFL, I believe these guys, they got to do what they got to do to make money, and if it makes their football career last a little longer, and if they want to shorten their life up, that's their business. We're independent contractors, supposedly. I think surely not. We shouldn't go to buildings on cocaine or heroin or things like that. But two, I think steroids have got such a bad rap. They don't really know the good sides of it, and they don't know. If these doctors are prescribing it and monitoring you, they're not going to do that if there's any really bad repercussions. No, they never have targeted really any one death to steroids other than Lawler, and they can't target that to him. So I just think that if the guys want to, and especially if you're an independent contractor, as long as you don't get in trouble with it and you're doing it by the law, I don't think you should have a problem with it.
Is it true back in '92 that you failed the steroid test when you were in WWE back then, or
Well, let's say '92. Was that when I came in as Sycho Sid?
It was no. It was
the next time.
This was the first time you were in there, and you just headlined WrestleMania against Hogan, and then you were out for a little while. And some say
what happened there was I never was busted for a steroid test. But what happened was this. After that WrestleMania, when all those indictments came down on Vince and stuff, and there was a no tolerance policy. All right, so everybody got tested in the beginning for who had been on them was going to be tested positive.
Right. And
so I was tested positive because I hadn't gotten out of my system yet.
Yeah.
But it wasn't no big deal about it. The big deal there was this. When I went first into Vince, what it was is simple. Dusty Rhodes came in and took over WCW. He came to me, Montgomery, Alabama, said, "Look, I'm the new guy here. I want you to be my man. And so to do that, I want you to sign a new contract for 4 or 5 years, new money, the whole 9 yards." So they brought me in. We started negotiating. I thought, man, maybe this is the time for me to call Vince McMahon. And I did. I called. They put me through right away. Vince McMahon, God, how do I get to this guy this quick? Sid, what are you? Well, I'm negotiating a new deal, and actually I'm able to talk to someone, during this. He said, well, he flew me up the very next morning.
Wow.
Laid all this stuff on the table, asked me what I wanted. I said, I wanted Hogan's spot. I wanted that spot. He said, okay, that's your spot. And this is what goes with it. So I went home. Time I got home that afternoon, now WCW's found out I was there. They come to the table with more money, more fringe benefits or more, things that make it, something attractive. So I said, okay, well, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to talk to them. I'm not going to make, I'm not going to play the game in between two people. I'm going to let it work itself out. I'm going to stay at WCW and go on with that. As I was going out the door that morning, Vince calls me. Hello? Oh man, I'm sorry, Mr. McMahon. I wasn't going to call you to play the, in between the fences here. I'm going to go ahead and sign the deal with WCW, and maybe down the road we can work with each other. He goes, no, I said, you don't understand. If you don't come now, you don't get this deal.
Wow.
So it's like, man. So I went in, told WCW I'm gone, and I walked out. Now, that's what happened with me in the WWF the first time. They pulled everything they said they were going to do with me, changed everything because Hogan changed his mind. And so then I remember we were in Albany. I went to Vince and said, hey, I want to shake my hand. I'm out of here. I'm quitting. You know, when I'll come back when we can, you know, things will stay like they were supposed to have stayed.
Yeah.
And the two, I was honest, I just wasn't mature enough or savvy enough for a territory like that. So he wouldn't shake my hand, wouldn't talk about it. And I told him I'd only be there up to WrestleMania, and that's where I pretty much ended. You know.
Yeah.
Did a few shots after that with the Warrior, which was weird.
Yeah. Is he as weird as everybody says that he is?
This is what really made me quit. We're in Baltimore. He's sitting there, and I said, we worked the night before. No, the next night was in Boston Garden. The first night was Baltimore. He goes, okay, I'm going to come in and clothesline. You powder. I said, no, Jim, this is what we'll do. You'll come in, I'll clothesline you. I'll send you off, duck my clothesline, give me one clothesline. Then I powder, and you shake all the ropes you want. He goes, well, the stars tell me that the Ultimate Warrior, and those little small dressing rooms at Baltimore, I was like, where is this camera at? Somebody's bullshitting me, you know? So I left out of the room and went to one of the agents. I said, come on, guys, this is real. I went, let me go back in here. So and the stars are lined up. And so I said, okay, the first night I did it. So we went to Boston the next night. I told him, I said, no, he's not kicking out of my finish. If he kicks out of my finish tonight, I go home tomorrow morning and I never come back. And that's what happened.
Wow. That's where we left off. Now, are you surprised when Vince started wrestling himself in the ring and then kind of continued doing so?
Yeah, I am, because I actually asked him about that once before.
Did you?
When I first worked there, and he told me he would never do that because, one, we know this as an owner comes into the territories and participates as a character. That's the greatest form of heat you can achieve. Okay, so where will you go after that? There's nowhere to go after that. All right, saying that, the guy's done everything. This has happened over the last few years. He's had somebody put his ass in his face. And then he did the last thing a person can do is lose his hair. But yet, I saw the other night, he's sitting there, looks like he's still wrestling. Someone's telling me he's the champ.
He's wrestling Sunday on pay-per-view.
Yeah, so, I am surprised about it because one, he told me how, and we know how hard that is. As a manager character, and that's what he is, a manager, he's not a wrestler, that they're short-lived to start with, and if you beat them up once, it's over, and if you cut their hair, it's definitely over. So I am a little surprised.
Yeah, because you wrestled in the territories for a while, and Memphis would do that a lot. Somebody would lose the hair versus hair, and they'd be gone and out of there. I read an interview once that somebody asked you about comparing yourself to Steve Austin and The Rock, and you had a really interesting quote. You said that they drew money once in their career where you actually drew money throughout your career.
And I've been more successful than almost anybody in the business. As far as every time I've been put in that position, I drew money. I drew big money. I set indoor tennis records at different buildings across the country. So those guys only came in, and I'm not trying to knock any of them, but Austin was in this business for a long time. He was in WWF before I got there, and the place was on its ass. When I came in, the place caught fire. Now Austin, was a recipient of that. Of course he did well and kept it going, but he kept it going once it was already up.
Yeah.
And then when it went down, he didn't bring it back up.
Yeah. Now, the business has changed a lot, obviously, over the last couple of years. Do you think if you went back to the WWE today, you could still be a big draw for them?
I think I'll be the biggest draw.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's going to be $10.
Today, the road schedule is, it's getting pretty intense over there. And, I'd imagine as you get older, you like your days at home. Do you think you could still handle a road schedule like that, a full-time WWF road schedule?
First of all, my road schedule on the road was 10 times tougher than anybody else's. So I got up. I was going to my second workout when people were just waking up. So that's never been a problem. And when I think about road schedules, I remember working for WCW one summer with only one day off through the whole summer.
Wow.
Vince and them's schedule's a lot lighter than it used to be. When I worked for Vince, we worked twice on Saturdays and Sundays, a 12 o'clock show and an evening show. And we did that 7 days a week, with very little time off. And if I did have a day off, I was doing promotional stuff. So they couldn't put anything any tougher on me than I've experienced.
Wow. Now, we talked about this a little earlier in the last shoot we did. At the end of the shoot, you were at the time real angry at Vince, and you were talking about doing the steps, the bleachers, and you said every time you think about the way that you were treated and the way things went down. But you seem a little more forgiving this time around. Why the change of attitude towards them?
Just matured.
Okay.
I understand it's a job, it's a business. I can't take everything personal. At that time, I was. Of course, I felt like I was lied to a little bit at that point. But other than that, I still, I think maturity is probably the biggest thing why I could see, and two, I've always said this from the beginning, that I can only achieve the things I want to achieve working for Vince, and I have to like the guy.
Yeah. Do you think there's something to be said for the fact that before you made it to the big time, before you went to WCW, you made it to the WWF at that time, you spent a lot of time on the territories in Continental and Memphis, and and you went back to Memphis throughout your career. Do you think there's something to be said today where guys just get shot right to the top and don't have that time on the territories?
Well, you don't learn the respect for the business when all of a sudden you from making $40 a night like I was in Continental and Memphis to making $40,000 a week or whatever. It's hard to appreciate it. And I've seen so many people change because of that. And I've seen people change that worked the small territories and then got their breaks too. I don't know if it's a big thing, but I think it's not a good thing. I'll tell you a guy who really did well and they really took him around the hard way was Kurt Angle.
Okay.
When Kurt Angle first started and was signed with WWF, he was working the Memphis territory.
Right.
He was working the Louisville territory and working for Vince. Probably on unscheduled matches, unadvertised, just being there. So he was working 7 days a week. He's one of the people, probably one of the last people who really worked themselves into a good spot. Yeah.
Now, if for some reason you never went back to the WWE, as an active wrestler, you never went to TNA, wrestling career ended today, do you think that you should be inducted into their Hall of Fame?
I think so, because I know I've done, so much more than just some of the people that have been inducted recently. Jerry Lawler was one. He's never going to equal anything I've done. Ric Flair either. Some of these guys have been around a long time. They're still not going to equal what I've done. So I think that I should. If I'm not going to worry about it because it doesn't really mean that much.
Yeah.
Stake.
Not that I want to go down the road of, unless you want to, of bashing Ric Flair, but I just had a conversation with Paul Orndorff the other day, and his opinion is that Flair got the push that he had because he was a good politicker and kissed a lot of rear ends. Do you agree with him?
I'll say a little bit, probably so, but then you got to realize Ric Flair was, after Harley Race, he was one of the last real world champions. He went from territory to territory working as a world champion, working hour matches every night. I just think he was in a good place at a good time, and then his name and character and persona just followed him, and I think still follows him today. I definitely don't think he's in the business today because of being an ass kisser. I think he's in there because of his ability to work.
I was going to ask you, are you surprised that he's still wrestling a full-time schedule even today?
No, I'm not. Because you got to realize he loves this like I love it, and me and him don't think of age.
You can relate to his mentality.
Right.
Then. I read an interview with Lenny Lane from WCW, and he said the thing about you is that you like to rib people when they think they aren't being ribbed, and that some of your classic Sid ribs, as he calls it, is when you don't think you're being ribbed. Is that an accurate statement?
That's true. I'll give you one. The last real rib I did to someone was Billy Kidman. I was just tired of his little crap, and I took his bag and put it up in a ceiling loft, so he never found his bag again. No one ever think of me doing that because I don't do things like that. Right. And he hadn't done anything to me personal. I just didn't like the way his attitude was. Yeah. For a little guy.
What do you think about the effect that the internet has had on wrestling over the last couple of years?
I think it's just been it's been good, but I think it's been more bad than good. And the reason why is this, and everybody I talked to about this is this, like a guy just recently did a little show back in Memphis. He thought because he had so many hits on his internet site that he was going to sell this place out. He had like 50 people show up. we rely too much on that internet. We got the simple things about this business to make it work is always going to be there. It's not going to change. Internet is not going to sell you out anything. You know, it's Joe Lockhart used to be the spokesman for Bill Clinton. Said it great. You know, it's a great tool, but it could be a horrible two-headed monster.
Do you think that in the wrestling business overall that they should have some kind of retirement plan set up or some kind of benefits or something for the guys? Or do you think the guys should be personally responsible for that kind of thing? And girls?
I don't know. I really don't think that they owe it. No, I think we know what we're getting into when we get into that business. Just like acting, there's not really a lot of retirement for actors. You know? And when you're making good money like that, you should be able to set some back and do right by it. You know. Now, if you're playing football and it's a commission and these people are putting their lives on the line and careers are so much shorter, I don't know. I just don't think wrestling. I mean, it'd be nice to have, but I just don't see it happening. And I don't see why it should happen.
Yeah. Again, as a guy that spent a lot of time in the territories years ago, and you said you've done some indies, over the last couple years, couple months. What do you think's missing today from the indies as compared to what was in the territories years ago?
Well, television, one. That's going to be your main thing that the indies don't have. The other is, back in the days of the territories, for instance, like this is usually, for example, I say I worked the Texas territory with Devon Erickson, I had my run there, then they're going to go, okay, well, we're going to find you a job. We're going to call Memphis and we're going to tell them what a good guy you are, what you did here, and move you on. Well, independents, it don't really work like that. Independents are sporadic and they're really far apart. So I think that's a downfall for it.
In your opinion, as a student of the game, what do you think draws more money for a territorial promotion? A great worker or a great big man?
Well, it's going to have to be a great big man that can work.
Gotcha.
Doesn't mean you have to do a moonsault off the top rope, but he's got to have some psychology and a sense for the business. Just say, for instance, Elegante, he was a big man, but he never drew money. I didn't have a sense for the business, So I think you can have both, but I think a big man with all the tools are going to be better than a small man with all the tools.
Gotcha. Do you think that the big man will always dominate the business in some form?
And there's a reason for this too. If you weren't so educated for wrestling and knew so much about it, I remember as a kid or seeing things like carnivals and stuff like that, you wanted to see the strong man.
Definitely.
And we understand about this thing about our business, we do understand is that if everybody was like me and Undertaker and Batista and Goldberg, and we didn't have Shawn Michaels who were great workers and other people like John Cena's and stuff like that, then we're not going to be big. We have to have that both, but I think the big man will always be the big draw because if you look at anything other than in boxing, other than Oscar De La Hoya, the big draw is always a heavyweight fight.
Right.
That's I think that just goes with with the way the world is. Everybody wants to see someone bigger than life.
I think, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this. I think that's a big problem with the independents is that everybody looks like the guys in the audience and that there's nobody that really stands out.
You hit the nail right on the head right there. That's what I just said. When you go to a wrestling event or you go to a bodybuilding contest or you go to somewhere, you want to see someone bigger than you, or something impressive.
Yeah.
And even if you're a big guy like me, you're impressed by someone who's big also.
Right. Do you ever think about writing a book?
Yeah, that's something I want to do. That's something I'm waiting, for this next run. If I get it with Vince, I want to have a 2-part book. Actually, I want to do the last part of my career first and then the first part of my career second.
Why? How come that?
Well, I think it would be important for the people to know what I've been through over the last 6-7 years and what it took to get back to where I'm at. And then talk a little bit about what's going on at that point. That'd be the end of that book. And then when I'm finished wrestling, then I could tell all about what happened getting to wrestling.
Gotcha. Would you take it if WWE contacted you and said, Sid, we don't have anything for you in the ring, but we'd like to give you an agent job to work with some of our bigger guys and teach them psychology and that kind of thing?
Well, I've always, and that's something I've made clear too, I want to do that one day. And I really want to help run a territory. That's what I think I really can do. But to get there, you're going to have to start somewhere. And if it had to be start just teaching some people some psychology, I'll give you a good example. Ole Anderson, that's how how I met him. He was teaching me how to be a tag team, with Danny Spivey, how to cut off the ring, how to smother a person, blah, 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 blah. Teaching me and people like that. Then all of a sudden he was the booker. So I think those are things of how you can be successful in a small part. And then, well, this guy looks like he can do something. Let's give him a bigger part.
Was Ole really influential to helping you develop early on in your career?
Yeah. I think, in my opinion, Ole Anderson is the smartest person I've ever met for this business.
Wow.
The smartest.
That says a lot. You've met a lot of people.
Yeah. He's just so intelligent, just a hard worker. He's not old school like people think he is, or he wouldn't have gotten all that trouble with the Black Scorpion. That was way above.
Right.
That was, too futuristic.
Mm-hmm.
Now it would be old school. So I think he was, I know this and I can make this a point. He's ahead of his game by this point. So me and Vader were tagging up, working against Sting and Davey Boy. We had these vignettes we did where
Absolutely.
they had them cheering us. We had our own cheering section. So that sort of made the bad guys with the heels cheerable. So he was already starting that 10 years before it happened.
I'm curious for your thoughts on this. Ole also wasn't involved in that Horseman DVD.
He didn't want to be.
Yeah, because after Vince took over Georgia, he said he would never take a check from him, and he still stands by that vow.
I talked to Ole. That's not really the real reason.
Oh, okay.
The real reason is just he was just not physically able to get to the airport, and it was a hassle to him.
Okay.
He doesn't need the money, and that was more of the reason. He didn't want to check for Vince McMahon.
Gotcha.
I don't believe that.
Gotcha. Over the years, it's been put out there, Sid loves to take off during softball season.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
No, it's not. I'll tell you how that got started. What happened was the very first time that I told you about the deal with Vince walking out after Boston.
Mm-hmm.
It was summertime. It took my attorney like 3 or 4 months to get me out of my contract with WCW. I'd already had one waiting for me,
Mm-hmm.
so it took them that long to get me out of my contract with WWF. So all I did was play softball, and it just seemed like when little things like that happened for me, it was around softball season. And so I played professional softball, not just, little pickup teams.
Oh, okay. Wow. Did you play collegiate baseball or?
No.
No. Oh, okay. Did you play any sports in college or?
No.
No? Oh, okay. Who throughout your career were some of your favorite and for whatever reason, maybe you just didn't have good chemistry or whatever, least favorite guys to work with?
Least favorite? Oh, man.
Sounds like Scott Steiner was.
Scott Steiner was tough. Working with Brett was a little tough.
Yeah.
Well, I did not want to work with him though. But like Elegante guys who were so limited they couldn't do much.
Yeah.
People like that. I didn't really have anyone I just didn't want to work with.
Yeah. Who were the guys that you really liked working with?
Well, always top of the list would be Sting. I put Bam Bam Bigelow up there. I put Vader up there. And the reason I like working with those guys and Shawn Michaels, but they were all workhorses. And I'm a workhorse, and I like to work hard every time out. These guys never took a night off.
What do you think about when people make comparisons to you and Batista? I don't know how much you've seen of Batista.
I haven't really heard any of the comparisons.
He's big, he's explosive,
Right.
real physical.
Yeah. I don't know. If I hear a comparison, if I do, which I don't hear many, I'm flattered if someone compares someone else who's right now in a good spot. If they think that, and of course he's got to be thinking the same because I'm before him.
Yeah.
So that question would be more directed to him. How'd he feel being compared to me?
What are your thoughts on newsletters in the wrestling business?
Never read one.
Never read one, ever?
Never ever read one. Never will.
Yeah.
Never read a magazine. I never look at magazines, okay? First of all, back when I first started, there was only a couple letter magazines.
Right.
Letters. These people had never wrestled before in their life. And if I'm looking for validation, I'm gonna ask Ole Anderson or Robert Fuller or Vince McMahon. I'm not gonna listen to a dirt sheet.
Right. Do you have, throughout your career, like maybe one or two mentors that you've always stayed in touch with, no matter where you were, to say, hey, can you take a look at this, or can I get some advice from you on this?
I always called Odie on things, and when I went back to WCW, I used to call Pat Patterson.
Oh.
I'd call him. As a matter of fact, when they were giving me a hard time with Harlem Heat, saying it was too racial, I had these guys coming out, not wearing shackles and chains, but bringing them out and putting them on their opponents, taking these leather straps and strapping white people, okay? And they said it was too racial. One reason they said that, because they didn't like it, was because my idea, and I would look like I was taking over.
Yeah.
So I'd call Pat. Pat says, well, Sid, it could be, but it's really not. So I had, I'd get me an outside opinion, and Pat was one of them.
Yeah. Why do you think that over the last couple of years that some of the younger guys, once they're given the ball, I guess you would have to say in WWE, since there is no WCW anymore, that some of the guys just implode, they just can't take it, and sometimes they ask not to have the belt or the push anymore?
Well, because there's so much pressure on you to succeed, and when I only here right now, it's really tough in there right now. They're not drawing very well. And when you're that person or you're the main event, you get all the criticism when it doesn't do well. Mm-hmm. You get all the accolades when it is well, but then I'm sure these dirt sheets and things that people do read them, that really is tough on them to read this about themselves.
At any point, looking back on your career, did you ever refuse to do a job for whatever reason for somebody? Because you did a lot of them. You put a lot of guys over.
Never refused one.
Never. Do you have any regrets of the way anything worked out in your career?
Only in my leg.
Yeah.
I wish I had jumped off that rope.
Yeah. What are some of, looking back, if you had to maybe put a time capsule together, maybe like 5 or 6 of your favorite matches that you had, maybe for your great-great-grandchildren down the line?
Well, I said once the match was Sting and Halloween Havoc, because I didn't even know the finish to it happened. That's always going to be my number one. The match with Shawn at the Alamo Dome because of the numbers of people. The one at Hoosier Dome with Hogan because of the numbers of people there. Those are always going to be the ones that stand out to me like that.
Yeah. And do you think that, through the internet and the newsletters, the people that don't know you, do you think there's a misconception about you as compared to the people that do know you and have worked with you? Yeah,
there is. You got to look at me. You look at me, you automatically think, okay, this guy's mean or intimidating. I've got this natural scowl on my face. I'm pretty much shy. And so when you put those two combinations, a mean-looking person who doesn't talk a lot, that and is also very loud when he speaks, people think I'm meaner than I really am. Yeah. The deal about, I've heard people say, well, if Sid's not happy, he takes his ball and goes home with it. You just said I've done more jobs than anybody. That's a false statement about me. Yeah. I have told, like the time I was winning the belt from Shawn at SummerSlam, the whole deal was I was hit, at Lothario with that camera, and then I think Shawn as well. Then the power bomb, and then I knew I was going to drop the belt back to him in his hometown. I just thought it was a better decision just to beat him clean, and then when he beat me clean, it would meant more. I just told Vince I thought it was not the smartest thing to do. I voiced my opinion about things like that, but I said, hey, you're the boss. I'm going to do what you asked me to do. Yeah. Now, during that time period, too, Bill Watts, I think, was in. Bill Watts is another guy I like. Didn't really get to be around him that much, but he's a smart guy, too. Yeah. I like him, too. I've had him on my radio show, and I like him a lot. I like him a lot. He was the one that offered me the position in the company to work as a booker. First coming to interview for my job back, he said, I'll tell you what, Sid, man, I like you. He said, would you like to work in the office with me? I said, that's what I want. He was the first one that brought me in. Something I'd like to get your opinion on. Jerry Jarrett wrote a book, and he said he thinks the reason that a lot of the independents don't do so well is because anybody that has a clue on how to book and how to write are in the WWE, and they're brought up, they're signed, that kind of thing. There's just not enough people out there that have been there and experienced it, because if they know what they're doing, they'd be up there. Well, I think why a lot of the reasons independents don't do as well as they could have, and most of the independents I've done up here, say for instance over the years, under people like Mike O'Brien, Dennis Caruso, people like that, they knew how to promote a show. Then you have people who don't know anything about promotion. I think that's probably the biggest problem in independence. It's just not the right promotion, finding the right sponsors.
Why do you think that you were always so over, no matter what role you were playing, heel, baby, or whatever, in the Northeast?
You know what? The northern people, and I've said this before too, the northern people they're smarter. And I'm from the South, it's hard to say that. They're smarter, they're not, you can't program the northern fan, especially northeastern fan. You can't program disliking a person or program them to like a person. So when I came up to this area, I always did real well because, they like people who spit on people. That's why I spit on someone, they enjoyed that. And so I just think that was just an automatic deal for me. That's why I always call the Gardens really my hometown.
In WCW, anyway, you were really, from what I remember, other than the Horsemen, you were really one of the first heels that were crazy cheered up in this area when WCW, the NWA Crockett would come up here. Were some of the guys back then that you and Spivey were working with, were they a little frazzled, the baby faces?
They were. Yeah. It was just frustrating. You got to realize, everything I did, they cheered.
Yeah.
Because I'd nip up out of a head scissors, then catch a guy with the clothesline. Then they would get back to back. Hey, Sid just took advantage of you. That's a babyface spot. It's a spot.
Right.
And I was physically able to do it. It's 6'8", 6'9", 300 pounds to nip up. That's pretty impressive. So I give an example. I did it to Sting one time. He let the guys get under his skin about it, and he said, "Hey, you're taking advantage of me." I said, "Steve, don't start like this. This isn't going to work out for you. Okay?
Yeah.
The only thing you're going to do is we're going to get in an argument. We don't need to do that." So I said, "Don't let these guys get under your skin." He didn't. The next night was perfect again.
Wow. In wrapping up, is there anything, we always like to ask the person being interviewed if they'd like to say something to their fans, because obviously all their fans are the ones that are buying these interviews.
Yeah, I do. And I've not had really anything that would come to me before people ask me this question, but I do. And just last night coming into New York, to Newark Airport, every time I walk down the street, I am so grateful to have people walk up to me and not tell me that they remembered me, but everyone tells me I was the best. And hearing that for my whole life, I know I had to have touched some people in the right way.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, we want to thank you for doing it, and I guess we'll sit down in, another 10 years?
I hope it'll be quicker than that.
Every 10 years. All right, very good. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've told this story before. We are with an iconic human being right here. A human being that's near and dear to my heart because he helped me out to get in this business, and I will forever be grateful for that. Mr. Sycho Sid, some people call him.
Just Sid.
It's not Sycho anymore, but my boy, Big Sid. What's going on, man?
Steve, just here like you are.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going well, man. I told the story. I was just telling the story. I've told the story on my podcast, and I've told it a couple other times. A lot of people don't know this story. When me and my brother was in global wrestling, Sid called us up and said, "Hey, man, I want to come down and work with you guys, see what you got." We said, "Cool." He comes down.
This is what really happened, Steve.
Okay.
I'm gonna refresh your memory.
Okay.
What it was a benefit for Terry Von Erich.
Right.
At the Sportatorium.
Right.
Mike Davis was the booker. He called me, asked me to come in. I had seen you guys on TV.
Okay.
So I was trying to come down and get you guys and Sean Waltman.
Right.
But I came in and got you guys, and we came in and worked that match.
Right.
Now carried from there.
Okay. All the superlatives I don't remember like he remembers.
I do.
But be that as it may, we had a tag match with him and his buddy that we thought was a worker, but it really wasn't a worker.
No.
It was his buddy from childhood. That was like an accountant or a lawyer or something.
An ag rep.
That's what it was?
An ag rep.
And he had Sid's boots on.
Yeah.
And he had Sid's all his garb on.
All of it.
He was all dressed like him. And I think Sid taught him a couple of moves outside the building before he came.
No, honestly, it was in the aerobics room at our gym. I taught him how to lock up. He was bad at that, and he never got good.
Right. But that match turned out to be a pretty good match.
It was a really good match.
With Sid and his buddy from childhood against me and my brother. I'll never forget that, man. We
Steve,
laugh about it to this
it was
day.
a great match. I think when I reflect on things like that, I think about that match. I think the downside of that match, and he had to fucking live with me for like 2 months. All right, you know, the dude took my shoes, my butter, my oatmeal. Him and Booker being cooking eggs and rice in the morning in my kitchen. Like, get out of here! No, guys, I'm gonna say this real quick. There's very few people I really do enjoy, and it is Stevie Ray. Stevie, I told you this many times. I think you were, and still say this, I think you were the money of the two.
Hey, I appreciate that.
And I really mean that. So, but again, it was this has been a great friendship. Great friendship.
Great ride.
And I'm glad to know you.
And I tell people this all the time. Anybody that's got something sideways to say about my dog, you know what I tell them? My dog is passionate. And he believes in what he believes in.
That's it.
When he sees things a certain way, he stands on it, brother. And I tell people that all the time.
Well, you remember
I admire that. More people should be that way.
Well, you remember I had to argue to get y'all's name.
Exactly.
With Dusty that day.
Exactly.
They were going to call you Chi-Town Heat.
Chi-Town Heat.
I said, no, they're from Harlem.
Yeah.
I wanted to call y'all Harlem Hellraisers.
I remember that, yeah.
Actually, I wanted to call yourself, I wanted y'all to call yourselves the Posse, but they just came out with that movie. And Rector, I wish y'all would have stuck with that name. But we came up with Harlem Heat.
Exactly. It worked out, man.
It just worked out.
And forever, I owe a lot to this guy, and I'll never forget it. Never forget it.
Don't worry about it.
This is my one of the real dogs of the business. And people that understand what I'm talking about right now, they know what I'm saying. This is a real dog. And the real dogs never die.
That's it, dude.
Big Sid, my boy. Appreciate it, man.
I love you, Steve.
Love you too, baby.
All right.